NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Woo!
Tax season is here, which means you've received or are expecting that tax refund any day now, and you're thinking about what to spend it on. How about a new home? With SaveWithConrad.com, we're helping renters become homeowners every single day, and it's more affordable than you think. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need a huge down payment. In fact, you may not need a down payment at all. At SaveWithConrad.com, we take the stress out of the home buying process. We'll determine your buying power. We'll even help you find a realtor. And unlike the banks, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. So if you're not ready right now, we'll get you on a plan to be ready. Stop throwing your money away, paying someone else's mortgage with your rent, and start the path towards owning your own home today at SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am great. As we record this, it is Wednesday morning. We very, very rarely record during the week, but I'm here, and believe it or not, I'm just about 8 or 10 miles down the road from headquarters for WWE. I'm in Connecticut. I'm back in Connecticut. First time in, 3.5, 4 years. It's awesome.
Wait. You like Connecticut? Nobody ever puts over Connecticut.
Well, I like it because I got to hang out with Bruce and his beautiful wife, Stephanie, last night. We had dinner together, and I get to leave tomorrow morning. So it's a lot easier to fall in love with a place when you know you get to leave the next day, and you had fun seeing your friends. So yeah, I'm having a blast.
I'm glad you got to catch up with Bruce. It's been a crazy couple of months for that man as they march towards WrestleMania and all the behind the scenes stuff that's happened with the actual company, and everybody is waiting with bated breath to see what's next for WWE. But what we know is, man, that stock has been on a tear. I'm sure you're talking about that and a lot more over on Strictly Business. But the real test, I think, for a lot of wrestling fans is this coming weekend. AEW is putting their Wembley Stadium tickets on sale. The seat map, as you and I are recording this, has been released. And it looks like they're set for 100,000. And I've seen some talk online that maybe they're trying to challenge the WWE's all-time attendance record from Dallas at WrestleMania a few years ago. Man, 100,000. Woo! It's a big benchmark. What do you think? You think they can get that?
When I heard about this, I think you and I discussed it initially. I really expected. I do expect AEW to do really well.
Yes.
100,000 though. I don't know about that. I hope they do it. It'll be good for them. It'll be good for the industry. It'll be a good thing all the way around if it happens. But I don't know. I think I'd manage my expectations a little bit on that one. I think that's a big number. I don't see it.
Here's the thing that I hate, Eric, and I know that at times you and I have both been accused of being AEW haters. I think that's silly. I think everybody who listens to this knows that you and I are pulling for the wrestling business, the entire industry, and AEW doing well is good for the entire industry. So we're both pulling for that. But the narrative that, well, if they only sell 40,000, it's a fail. If they only sell 60,000, it's a fail. If they only sell 80,000, it's a fail. Like, there's this zero-sum conversation. Like, you've either got to sell 100% of the tickets and shatter WWE's record, or it's a fail. And it's like, wait, WWE did this one time, and in what stratosphere would having 40 or 50 or 60,000 fans be deemed a failure? That'd be the largest AEW crowd in history. It can't be a net negative. It's a positive.
Yeah, I don't know who's saying that or where they're coming from. I think I don't know. That's just weird to me. One of the things that I'm most excited for AEW about is that whether they sell 40,000, 60,000, 100,000, 70, whatever they do. But I think it establishes AEW as a legitimate international property.
Yes, it does.
I think it's going to open up a lot of doors for international television opportunities. So I think the real benefit to AEW, whether they sell 2 tickets or 100,000 tickets, well, 2 tickets would be an extreme, but regardless of what they sell, they'll establish themselves as a viable, legitimate international touring property, which will open up international television doors, which will result in a lot of revenue downstream. And that's the play that I think is the biggest play, regardless of how many tickets they sell. Obviously, you want to sell us, you want a great headline, right? Especially AEW. Tony loves good headlines.
Yes.
And you want a good headline. You need a good headline. You're a growing business. But aside from headline, I think the downstream impact financially is going to be significant for AEW, and I think it's going to open up doors down the road. Other promoters are going to see this and go, maybe we can, we can't bring WWE to our market, but maybe we can bring AEW. So I think it's going to be a great thing, and I think anybody focusing too much on how many tickets they sell is being a little juvenile.
Well, I'll tell you what's exciting to me is to have this conversation with you, because you did something similar to this once upon a time. And I'm sure some people won't be able to draw the parallel right away, but hang tight. Eric has talked a lot on this program about how signing Hulk Hogan to WCW once upon a time, who we'll be talking about later on in our topic today when we talk about Hulkamania's Australian tour. But when you talked about bringing Hulk Hogan on board with WCW, yes, there was conversation, I'm sure, about he'll help us sell merch and he'll help us sell tickets and he'll help us sell pay-per-views. And all of that was written about in the Observer. But the intangible that didn't get much discussion in the industry newsletters at the time is what you shared on this program, that bringing Hulk Hogan added some legitimacy to Madison Avenue. So when you're going out and you're pitching national advertising, national marketing, national brands, national licensing, instead of trying to explain what WCW was, you could explain that you had Hulk Hogan. Let me expand on that. WWF at the time was really like the Kleenex or the Coca-Cola or the Band-Aid of their industry. Band-Aid is a brand, but a lot of us just say, hey, we need a Band-Aid. Really, you need a bandage. You might not need a tissue. You might not need a Kleenex. You need a tissue. Those just became interchangeable. And WWF became the brand. And that still exists today. And I think that we in the wrestling bubble, we all know what AEW is. But a lot of the mainstream, especially mainstream international, may not. But when you put a qualifier in there like you did to say, we have Hulk Hogan. Oh, well, this must be pretty big if they've got Hulk Hogan. If you can tell those folks, well, we just ran Wembley Stadium. Oh, this must be pretty big. It sends a message, a shot across the bow to the rest of the industry for live events, for licensing, for marketing. We're big enough to run a huge stadium show. It establishes them as a disruptor brand, a challenger brand in a big way, does it not?
It does. It does. And unfortunately, AEW is going into the market without a tremendous amount of television. I don't know what kind of television distribution that they have in the UK, if any, or if they're distributed on a streaming platform. WWE's been in that market for 30 years?
Probably more.
And it is very, very well established. But the disadvantage is AEW's new. They probably don't have the television distribution that WWE has. However, that new car smell, that the fact that they are a disruptor, the fact that they're merging into the market, and I think the fact that, look, AEW has been in the wrestling zeitgeist. I think that's the first time I've ever used that word, by the way. I've always kind of shied away from that word. I don't know why. It just bothers me when I hear people use it. But here I am using it. But AEW's been in the especially on the internet. It's been in the wrestling zeitgeist now for a while. It's been dominant in the internet. They've built up a lot of anticipation. That's why I think it's going to do really well. There's a tremendous amount of anticipation to see what AEW is all about and experience it live. And while they don't have the television distribution, the fact that they're the new kid on the block, or as you say, a disruptor, absolutely, I think is going to play in their benefit. And the same thing, to your point, will probably hold true in other markets internationally. It's going to be exciting to see how well it does. Now this is where I'm going to come off being negative. The real question is, how are they going to do next time? because doing well the first time, when it's that new car smell and you're the first time in the market, we see this here domestically in the US. AEW has a tendency to do really, really well the first time when they're in a market, and the drop off is fairly significant afterwards. Let's see what happens. They're going to have to really over deliver big time. So when they leave Wembley Stadium, everybody that came, whether it's 100 or 100,000, leave talking about it, excited about it, and telling their friends and family about it. If they can achieve that, they're opening up some big doors that are going to pay big dividends for a long time.
If you were going to announce a surprise, like a lot of people are saying, hey, if they're going to try to sell a stadium, they're going to need to pull out all the stops. And that means I've heard discussion of Okada. I know that's big to the hardcore fan, and that's big in Japan. I've heard names like Goldberg. I've heard names like Mercedes. And I think most of us expect CM Punk to be there. Would you think that you want to sort of 1-2 punch these announcements? Like, I expect, because you and I are recording before Dynamite, I expect that the announcement that Punk is coming back will be either tonight or next week. By now, everybody will know the answer to that, I suppose. But would you try to get one more big announcement or surprise before tickets went on sale? Or would you do that once the momentum of this first rush dies off? Because it does feel like there's, as we understand it, there's over 55,000 email addresses registered for their pre-sale. The idea being those 55,000 in theory aren't just trying to get one ticket. Maybe they're trying to get two. Do you just try to make the Punk announcement, make it clear he's going to be here, and see what happens with the on sale, and then maybe announce a Goldberg or a Mercedes or an Okada as we get closer to do the last minute push? If you need that help getting over the hump, what would you do?
I like the idea of letting my announcements and my surprises and my build play out over a period of time rather than just blowing it all out once, because once the buzz is over, it's over. You're going to get 80% of your buzz, your chatter is going to be within 24 hours of the announcement. After that, it dies down significantly. So I would, to your point, suggestion, I would stretch it out a little bit. I'm not so sure that I would want to bring in a Mercedes or even a Goldberg for a one-off like this, because I don't know, I don't know that I would do that. And I don't think they're going to need it, quite honestly. If they have 55,000 people that have already signed up for pre-sales, nobody's buying one. I don't think. I don't know anything about this. I've never done this.
Hang on now, Eric. Why wouldn't you bring in, like, they do that for WrestleMania every year? This is kind of the AEW WrestleMania here, is it not?
No, it's not. It's the first time they're going to the UK in a big market. It's not an established pay-per-view. It doesn't have a track record. It's not a brand. It's a big event. Don't get me wrong. I'm not pissing on it. It's not WrestleMania. And I would want my brand, my story, my talent to be the reason that this event is successful. I wouldn't want the perception, or in this case, maybe the reality, of having to rely on somebody who's not a part of my company to help sell that house. I said this last week when I was talking to Casio. I mean, I think it was Casio. Might have been John Elbow over Strictly Business. I wouldn't even want Punk on the card. If I'm Tony Khan, I want to be successful. I want to have a huge event. I want it to be successful. I want it to be critically successful. I want fans to have loved it. And I want to have done it without someone like CM Punk, and certainly without someone like a Bill Goldberg or a Mercedes. Nothing against them, because in the case of Bill Goldberg, I like Bill a lot. He's a good dude. And he's probably, if he does end up there, it'll probably help quite a bit. Same with Mercedes Moné. But I'd want to be able to go over there and do it on my own, and know that my roster, my stories, my brand is what sold that event, not relying on somebody else.
I think this could,
as far as Punk goes, I wouldn't give that piece of garbage the leverage.
Oh, dude.
I wouldn't want him to think for a second that he is the reason that event sold out or got close to us, whatever it is. I wouldn't let him even for a moment think that he had anything to do with the success of what I was doing over in the UK if I was Tony.
I do want to talk about Punk and what happened last week. But before we do, how could you argue that this doesn't feel like it could be AEW's first WrestleMania? It's their first stadium show. I understand you're saying WrestleMania as a brand. All In, while it hasn't been an AEW brand, was the show that launched this whole thing and was a pretty iconic thing because it was quote unquote just three guys who sold over 10,000 tickets in a handful of minutes. This feels like, you know, the part two of that. Now they're going to see if they can do it for a stadium show. AEW's first stadium show, man. If this is as successful as we hope it is, you don't think they could keep doing All In as stadium shows and do it internationally? That's
no, I do. I mean, my comment was, you know, what I meant to say is this is not WrestleMania. WrestleMania is a long established brand, an event. This is their first time in that market. Maybe it will be someday, to your point, if they do really, really well and they do it annually. Maybe Wembley, that maybe they show up there every single year, or they do stadium shows, you know, around the world every single year, or one big one. Maybe in the future, it could be their WrestleMania, but it certainly is not now.
I would be shocked if they're not going to use celebrities and soccer stars and all the pomp and circumstance you see for a WrestleMania. I think you'll see on this show.
I would imagine they would, and particularly given the Khan family's relationship with soccer or football, as they say in the UK. I'd be shocked if there are not a lot of celebrities there as well. And that's the other reason I talked about this with Alba and Strictly Business. One of the reasons I'm so confident that they're going to do well is, again, it's the new car smell. There's been this buzz that's been building. There's an awareness of what AEW is, and the UK is obviously a big market for professional wrestling. All of those things point to success, right? But God, I forgot where I was going with that. I wanted to make a point.
You were talking to Alba and about celebrities and
yeah. But one of the things that I think will also, if not ensure their success, certainly give AEW a big boost is the infrastructure that already exists, the relationships that already exist in the UK with media, with local print, radio, television. You know, the Khans have been in business in the UK for a while now and been in the sports business. A lot of great relationships come with that. So it's not like they're going over there for the first time with a bunch of people that have never done anything in the UK, never promoted anything in the UK. They're going over there with, you know, a fair amount of existing infrastructure, and if not infrastructure, at least relationships, which are going to prove to be really, really beneficial.
Well, I'll tell you what else is beneficial. When it comes time to look for tickets, look no further than Game Time. We're talking a lot today about tickets in Wembley and tickets across the world, and we're even going to be talking about tickets over in Australia. And for a lot of us, man, we can get pretty stressed having to plan, you know, months in advance. Oh man, that went on sale already? It sold out? Oh, I forgot. I missed it. That's why you need Game Time. You get exclusive flash deals on tickets for things like football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, everything you're looking for. But maybe my favorite thing about doing business with Game Time is the peace of mind you get. Not only do they make it easy to get your tickets, I mean, seriously, 2 taps and you're all set. They send the ticket straight to your phone. You don't even have to dig through your email. It doesn't get easier than that. But the peace of mind you get with the Game Time guarantee, Eric, this is the game changer for me. They guarantee you'll always get the best price. Here's how they do that. If you find tickets in the same section, in the same row for less money, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That guarantees you that you're getting the absolute best price. They also eliminate the guesswork. I think we've all taken a look at like a seat map. Like if you took a look at that seat map from the Wembley show, man, it is massive. And it's hard to really tell from that, all right, where Am I going to be okay? And what is my view going to look like? Game Time makes it easy. They're going to show you images of your seat before you buy. So you get the perspective of, all right, this is what it's going to look like. Bam. You can pull the trigger. It's that easy. 2 clicks, 2 taps. Tickets are in your phone. Download the Game Time app. Snag the tickets without the stress. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code WEEKS. We're going to get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code WEEKS. You'll get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Eric, you're actually in an area of the country where there's probably a lot of stuff going on tonight. You going to use Game Time tonight?
No, I'm not going to tonight because I'm going to be a little busy this evening at an event. But I have to admit, I got on Game Time 2 days ago just to see what was going on in the area. Now, I knew I wouldn't be able to do anything, but that's the thing I like about Game Time is if you travel a lot, you're going to different cities, you may end up with some time, especially if you're going on business. A lot of times you've got time on your hands. You're there by yourself, whatever. You're sitting around in the evening. There's not much else to do. You just sit around and watch television. But you can go to Game Time and see what's going on in the market, whether it's comedy, whether it's a concert. And the other thing is there's a lot of, what I noticed especially, is a lot of musical acts that I really hadn't heard of before. You know, smaller venues, and you see somebody's playing. You know, I'm going to go check out their music, go listen to a little bit of their music over on iTunes, find them. You can discover a lot of great music and probably a lot of great comedy that same way. But if you're traveling, for someone like me that travels and I get to a location, I get bored real quick. It's an awesome opportunity to just find something fun to do. It is easy, and I love it. I love the app. Probably going to end up seeing a lot more events than I would otherwise, because the process of getting to, especially lately, all you hear about is how horrific it is to get tickets and how complicated it can be sometimes and expensive. But Game Time makes it so freaking easy that I'll probably enjoy more entertainment than I would have otherwise.
They make it easy, 2 taps and it's in your phone. They give you the peace of mind of knowing you got the best possible price. And they eliminate the risk of getting stuck with a bad seat. Who wants bad seats? Get great seats today with Game Time. Use our code WEEKS and get $20 off your first purchase.
As a matter of fact, Conrad, I saw Willie Nelson has got a tour this summer, and he's touring with several other artists. And I discovered that on Game Time while I was on there looking for what was going on in this market. But I did notice that Willie Nelson is on tour this summer, and I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of Game Time and checking out Willie Nelson.
Well, what I can't wait to hear is what you thought about CM Punk checking out Monday Night Raw. Of course, at this point, Monday Night Raw is in the rearview mirror, and they were in Chicago. They debuted a brand new big gold belt. We'll talk about that in a moment. But before we do any of that, the rumors were out that, wait a minute, there's a visitor backstage at Monday Night Raw in Chicago. And of all people, most talked about guy in the business the last several weeks, Mr. CM Punk, hanging out at a WWE show. What'd you think?
What a desperate bitch.
What? I loved it. I thought it was awesome.
Why?
I mean, listen, I can't believe that Mr. Controversy Creates Cash doesn't love this move. Like, we know he's coming back to AEW. We know he's going to be the face of this Saturday show. I just don't see a scenario where this is bad to have the entire industry talking about it. And like, you got to think by showing up early to Monday Night Raw that it's going to leak, that then fans in the crowd will know that he's there. Maybe you're hoping there's going to be some CM Punk chance, but if the entire industry is talking about him this week and he shows up on the regular AEW show, they just make the announcement he's coming back. Doesn't that just add to the momentum? Like, that's a huge deal.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I have just zero respect for him, like none. To me, it just came off as a desperate move for attention. I just, I did controversy. When controversy works in your favor, it's great. But controversy can also have blowback. I don't think there's going to be any blowback or negative reaction to this other than maybe from me, which doesn't clearly matter. But to me, it just comes off as a desperate, it's just a desperate little bitch, which is really what he is. He is a bitch. He's a whiny, overrated little bitch.
All right, listen. Maybe I missed something. Help me understand. I know once upon a time you weren't happy with a comparison he made about, WCW and Hall and Nash jumping ship, and he compared it to what was happening at the time in AEW, and you didn't like that. I get that.
It's not that I didn't like it. It was a reflection of who he is and what he is. And I don't really care what he says or anybody else for that matter. But when you come out and make a statement like Punk did and suggest that he's going to make a bigger impact on AEW, however he said it, I'm paraphrasing and butchering it obviously in the process, but basically made the comment that, him coming to AEW was a bigger deal than Scott Hall and Kevin Nash when they came in and we created NWO, is such a stupid thing to say. And obviously he was dead ass wrong, but it was such a stupid thing and desperate thing to say, desperate for attention, that it made me lose some respect for him. I understood it. I get it. It's the wrestling business. You're promoting, you're hyping, you're telling stories, you're doing everything you can to create attention. That's the nature of the business. And I get that part of it. But it wasn't just that one thing. When Punk came out and said that he was a more significant signing than Hall and Nash, it wasn't just that. It was when he first came out, when Punk first came out, made his debut in AEW. The first thing he did, one of the first things he did, was bury Hulk Hogan. Now, I'm not here defending Hulk Hogan. Okay, people are going to have their opinions about Hulk, and as do I, and we all know that I think the world of Hulk Hogan. But for Punk to come out in his first promo and bury Hulk Hogan in order to try to get himself over, to me, that told me everything I needed to know about CM Punk. That's the cheapest freaking heat you could possibly try to get. And if that's all you got, dude, if you're relying, first of all, he doesn't know Hulk Hogan. I don't think he's ever met Hulk Hogan. He certainly never worked with Hulk Hogan. So to come out and bury a guy and call someone a piece of shit that you've never even met and you don't know, I'm sorry. That's a reflection of your character or lack thereof. And that's what really turned me off to him. I went when I heard about Punk coming to AEW, I was excited as everybody else. I didn't know Punk. I didn't really have much of an opinion of him, good or bad. I really wasn't watching him very closely when he had his run in WWE, but I could just tell by the energy that was created by that announcement, the fact that he was coming in. I was excited, just like everybody else. And then to come out and have to rely on cheap heat like that to get yourself over with the internet crowd, to me, that defined who Phil Brooks really is and what he really is. And I think he's freaking overrated. He was in the right place at the right time, got a great opportunity. He made the most of it, and he's done a good job keeping up his mystique. But once the bell rings and you see what you see in the ring, not so much.
Wait.
I just don't think he's that good.
How can you, in the same conversation, defend Hulk Hogan and then say, when the bell rings, Punk ain't that good? Dude, come on now.
No, when the bell rings, first of all, he looks like the guy that changes my oil at fucking Jiffy Lube. Number one, he does not look like a star. He's built like a.
Why are you doing this? Where's all this coming from?
You're asking me what I think of him, and I'm telling you, I think he's overrated. He doesn't look like a star. He doesn't carry himself like a star. He can't cut a promo like a star. He's just overrated. I mean, if I see one more still shot of CM Punk covered in blood, looking at his belt and with tears in his eyes, I'm going to fucking gag. He's just overrated, in my opinion. That's all.
Who is he overrated by?
I don't know. The majority of the AEW audience, I guess, that put him over, talk about how great he is. I don't know.
The discussion is that this second Warner Brothers show, this Turner show, $52 million a year. And the rumor is that deal was contingent on Punk. You still don't get it?
It's not a matter of I get it. Look, my opinion of him is based on what I, after having been a wrestling fan almost all my life and spent 30 some odd years in the business, look for when I'm looking at talent. And to me, the cat is overrated. I don't give a fuck who's spending $52 million on him. I think that's like the dumbest move in the world. There's going to be some executive somewhere that's going to be wishing they didn't make that call. I just don't get it. I don't. But hey, good for him. Good for Tony. If you can, if Tony can suck it up and realize that he's bringing a guy back that made him look like an absolute douchebag. Sitting next to him at a press conference, he made Tony look like this smallest piece of trash I can imagine. And you're going to bring that guy back because somebody's going to pay you a lot of money to do it. Good for you, man. Good for you. I wouldn't do it. I would not do it. It's not worth it.
The exact quote, just so you know, that started all this with you and Punk, I think. He did it at a press conference. Quote, "If you're competing with somebody on another night that's got a 30-year head start, that's fine. But to me, our competition is our audience. As long as we keep them engaged and keep them happy, I think that to bring it back around, that's what we're doing. So I'm not Hogan or Savage. Daniel Bryan and Adam Cole, they're not the outsiders. I see the parallels, but this is totally different. I'll go ahead and say it, and people can quote me, and they'll be pissed off about it. But to me, this is bigger." And I guess you took issue with that. And man, it's just been a downhill slide with y'all ever since. And
no, it's look, what he said in that exact quote in and of itself, man, doesn't bother me one bit, but it's a combination of things with him. It's the promo that he cut on his first day out and reaching into his cheap heat bag because he doesn't really have much else to say or deliver. And to have to dig into your cheap heat bag of tricks and try to get yourself over with the internet audience by burying a guy that, by the way, CM Punk couldn't carry Hulk Hogan's boots in any shape or form. Is he technically capable of doing more in a ring? Sure. Does it fucking matter? Absolutely not. In the big scheme of things, we'll see CM Punk go down in any kind of wrestling history books as achieving the kind of success that Hulk Hogan created and achieved? Absolutely not. He's just a guy that was in the right place at the right time and took advantage of a great opportunity. But that quote didn't necessarily bother me. It's a combination of things that he said and done. What bothers me the most, and I don't know why it should, because I don't have a dog in the hunt, but for CM Punk to do what he did to Tony Khan and to the whole company in that press conference, that's what put him over the top for me. That to me, it told me everything I need to know about CM Punk. And I wouldn't go near him with a 10-foot pole. I don't care. It just doesn't, I cannot imagine why Turner, TBS, is spending $52 million a year on a wrestling show that's going to air on Saturday night anyway, because there's just no audience there. But to make CM Punk, quote unquote, the face of that brand in that initiative, knowing his track record, good fucking luck. By the way, how's the rest of the roster? How's the rest of your company feel about this move? You know, that's another thing. You know, this guy's, I think he's cancer, and I think bringing him back for any amount of money is a mistake.
well, I guess we'll agree to disagree. If I was Tony Khan, I'd be working to bring him back too. But I'm a Punk fan, and I don't know. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see how they do when tickets go on sale this week, and I'm excited for our topic today. Talking about when you and Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair invaded Australia. Hulkamania has been a powerful brand since at least 84. Eric would argue before. But it was still hot in 2009. Nostalgia just sells. Everybody wants to feel like they did way back when, and that's the reason you see some of these old bands still touring all these years. I mean, Kiss started their retirement tour, their farewell tour 25 years ago. They're still going.
Is that crazy?
So at this point in your career, 2009, man, you've done it all. You've been with the AWA, you've been with WCW, you've been with WWE, and the rumors were always there from the first time WCW shut its doors. Somebody's going to start up a new thing, and Hulk Hogan is going to have ownership in it. And Hulk Hogan starting his own promotion. We heard that at least twice a year, seemingly every year. And there was always discussion of what television network was interested and where will Hulk and Eric go and start a new promotion with a new television network. Do you remember ever having a serious conversation about you and Hulk trying to do something with a television network?
Just thinking back there, I had separately, not with Hulk, I had a couple of conversations, but nothing serious, nothing at all serious. There was never a serious offer or a serious discussion on the table. I think Hulk and I took a couple of different meetings. We did meet with Fox at one point. But even that was probably the only meeting that Hulk and I took together. I think David Hill was the guy. And I think David Hill at that point was the head of Fox Sports. Can't remember. It was a long time ago. But even that meeting was more social than it was real. But no, there was always a conversation. There was always people speculating, but there was never anything real or tangible.
So along the way, I'm sure Hulk got a ton of offers from independent promoters. I've seen Rick get crazy offers in the last several years, just here and there and yon. And whenever these would come around for Hulk Hogan, I imagine that a lot of times promoters would reach out to you, hoping that you could put them in touch with Hogan. Was that a pretty regular occurrence once upon a time?
It happened pretty frequently, but I was also handling a lot of Hulk's business, not just wrestling business, but I was also handling a lot of his licensing and merchandising and different opportunities. So I would get a call probably once, twice a year on average from somebody interested in possibly bringing Hulk in or creating a tour. But out of those one or two a year, very few of them were serious or really had the resources to pull it off.
I gotta ask, why Australia? Like, how does this deal come together? Who helps put this deal together? Just talk us through the Hulkamania Australia tour as a concept and an idea, like the first pitch.
Yeah, it was interesting. And, knowing I was going to do this, we were going to cover this topic, I spent the last couple of days trying to remember exactly that. How did this thing, what was the catalyst? What was the first conversation and who was it with? And some of the names obviously escape me, but the pitch came from, I think it's Rikishi's cousin, Reno. I think he wrestled this Black Swan. Super guy, by the way, really super guy. But Reno had been working with a promoter, actually two of them, father and son. Can't remember their names either, but Michael was the son's name. It was the guy that I dealt with the most. But Reno had been working with this promoter in Australia previously. I think they had done some shows in Australia, smaller shows, with this promoter, and Reno wanted to try to see if Hulk would be available and as well as Rick and some of the other bigger names that we could put together. So Reno, I didn't know Reno, and he reached out to me through the William Morris agency. I was repped by William Morris at the time, and Reno knew that. So he reached out through my agent, took a meeting. I liked Reno a lot, seemed like a really bright guy and had his shit together. And I ran it by Hulk, and Hulk got excited about it. Australia was always that market that, I think Hulk and others felt like, man, if we could just do one big tour in Australia, because it was a hot market, and Hulk hadn't spent a lot of time in Australia. I'm not even sure he had been there before. I have to check on that. I don't remember that, but it may have been the first time that Hulk had even been to Australia. And I think the idea of going to a market where Hulk had never been before, and a big market, Australia's a big wrestling market, to go there for the very first time without the WWE was really attractive to Hulk. So when I met with Reno, I did a little research on the promoters and had a couple conversations with Michael. I'll think of his last name before this thing's over with, I'm sure. But I had a couple conversations with the promoters. And by the way, they also booked the Rolling Stone. They were rock and roll promoters primarily. And they had booked some major acts, including the Rolling Stones. So clearly they had their shit together and knew what they were doing, had the relationships with venues and all the other things that you really need to have to be a successful promoter. So they were credible. And, I ran it by Hulk and he got excited about it. Hulk wanted Rick on the card. That was a big concern. Hulk was in really, really bad physical shape at that point. And Hulk also knew that he had to be in there with somebody that he could really trust and depend on that could help him overcome some of the limitations that he had physically, because he was in really bad shape.
All the back at the time? All
back. Yep. His knees were an issue, but he could work around that. But his back was really bad at that point in time. I was shocked he even agreed to go. He couldn't sit, he couldn't stand, he couldn't lay down. And you got a 18 or 20 hour flight or whatever it is to get over there. And it was brutal, but he did it. And he was excited about doing it.
The Australia thing, I have to admit, is something I hadn't really thought about, that Hulk Hogan wouldn't have been there. But yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like, as I understand it, he had never wrestled in Australia, which does seem a little interesting. But when you think about it, I think WCW ran over there in 2000, but by that point, they weren't using Hulk as often. And I don't even remember. I think one of them was in the fall, so he would have been gone after Bash to the Beach 2000. And I guess the WWF never really went between like 86 and 02. So yeah, that's crazy to think about. Looking at Cage Match, it looks like, yeah, he wrestled 4 times in Australia, and it was always this tour. That's interesting that of all the places, of all the corners of the world Hulkamania had touched, apparently not so much for Australia. What was your preconceived notion of Australia? Did you have one, like, as far as their wrestling fandom or what have you?
No, I didn't. I obviously I was excited. I've always loved going to new countries and experiencing different cultures and learning. That's always appealed to me. So I was excited just generally to go to Australia. I had never been to Australia personally at that point. So it was exciting for me on a personal basis. On a business basis, the deal that we put together on paper was a really, really sweet deal financially. I knew that the wrestling audience was large and loud. I knew that there was a big wrestling audience there, but beyond that, I didn't really have any expectations.
Had you ever spent? I mean, whenever I think of Australia, I think of the old legendary promoter, Mr. Jim Barnett. Did you ever have any conversations with Mr. Barnett about Australia, or no?
Not really. Generally we did. From time to time, Jim would tell stories about certain people, wrestlers, and Jim would reference a lot of the things that he did in Australia, but never really got into much detail about it.
I just find it interesting that, here this huge wrestling crazed country is, that maybe the biggest star in wrestling history had never really gone to. It is interesting. 2002 is a show I want to bring up, because you're in the company here in WWE when they're going to Australia, and Hulk is advertised for this show. So it was supposed to happen in 2002, back when you guys were both working with WWE, but he winds up leaving the company before the show happens. In a weird way, that kind of becomes a blessing when it's time for you to promote the 2009 tour, because it's the first time Hulk Hogan set foot over here, right?
It was a big deal. It was. And I don't remember the details or why Hulk left WWE in 2002. I'm sure.
The WrestleMania payoff usually.
Yeah. He and Vince got into a bitch contest, but yeah, it was a big deal, and the anticipation not only from the wrestling fans, I think that was real, but also from the promoters themselves. You know, the venues. You know, we wrestled in some of the biggest venues in Australia. We'll get into that in a little while, which was kind of a mistake in the long run. But I think the anticipation and the expectations of Hulk showing up was huge, not just with wrestling fans, but the promoter, the venues, media. Got a lot of media. It was great.
Talking about the this particular venture, Condon Sports and Entertainment.
Michael Condon, that's it. Thank you.
This is the promotional group who's putting it together. You said it was a really sweet deal. The terms of the deal that you're talking about is they were going to give you guys X number of dollars to put together the wrestling card, or here's how much Hulk's making, here's how much Ric's making, here's how much I'm making.
Well, it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
Again, Reno was, he had, we didn't build the entire roster. Okay. So once we got Hulk on board, Hulk wanted to make sure that Ric was on board. And then, you know, Brutus, the freaking barber beefcake, was on board. The Nasty Boys were, you know, so we had certain people that Hulk wanted to bring along, but the rest of the card, Reno put together. So it was kind of a combination. And look, Hulk got the majority of that revenue. I don't remember what the deal was. It was very significant, though. And it would have had to have been to get Hulk on a plane, especially given the condition he was in at that point, to fly all the way to Australia. So it was a massive deal financially. And we meaning Hulk and I and our side of that equation, would have received the bulk of that, and Hulk would have received the bulk of that money. But even for myself and for Ric and others, financially, it was a good deal.
Well, I'll tell you what else is a good deal. Henson Shaving. Very seldom do we get to come on this program, or just in life, Eric, and talk about how something is better, but yet still cheaper. Normally, when we reduce the cost of something and something is cheaper, we consider it to be less than, and it's not as good. And the more you spend, the better it gets, that's the way it works in our brain. That's why I have a little trouble with Henson Shaving. It's not only better than what I was doing. I mean, seriously, this was the best razor I've ever had. It's also cheaper. I just love these guys. Henson Shaving is a family-owned business. You know, I love that. And they're an aerospace parts manufacturer. Huh? Yeah, these folks made parts for the International Space Station and the Mars rover, and now they're making metal razors using their aerospace grade CNC machines. They're making the thinnest razors I've ever heard of. 0.0013 inches. That's less than the thickness of a human hair. Think about that. A razor thinner than a human hair. Now, what does that matter to you? Well, it means less wobble, less vibration, less nicks, less cuts, less scrapes. And as if that wasn't enough, Henson has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream. It's going to make clogging virtually impossible. What I respect about these cats over at Henson is they really wanted to make the best razor, not the best razor business. There's no plastic here. There's no gimmicky subscriptions. There's no proprietary blades that won't work next year. There's no planned obsolescence at all. This works with a standard old school dual edged blade, just like all the boys in wrestling use and just like your grandfather used. Except these are thinner than ever, 0.0013 inches. So you get the old school feel, but the benefits of new school tech. And once you own a razor, and I think this will be the last razor you ever need, once you own a Henson razor, you're going to spend like $3 to $5 to replace the blades. Not $3 to $5 a week, not $3 to $5 a month, not $3 to $5 a quarter, $3 to $5 a year.
That's crazy. Is that not nuts?
It's unbelievable. Think about this. If you think to yourself, well, I'm going to live another 30 years. You might need $90 for razor. What are you talking about? That's what we used to spend like for a quarter on razors. When you go down to the drugstore, they keep the replacement blades under lock and key. You got to ask an associate to come unlock it. That's how expensive it is. This gave me the best shave of my life. I loved it so much I bought one to keep at home, one to keep at the office, and one in my travel bag. My barber's even got one now. Think about how many razors she's used in her life. She says this is the best one she's ever used. You will absolutely love it. And it just feels old school. It feels substantial. It feels high quality. It feels like a sense of occasion, like you're going to love it. I can't recommend it enough. Let's say no to subscriptions. Let's say yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/83weeks. Pick the razor for you and use our code 83weeks and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free. All you got to do is add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/83weeks and use our code 83weeks. This is the real deal, is it not, Eric?
It is, and it's so cool. You hit it right on the head, though. It's like that old school feel and look, because it's like the old style razor. Like I remember as a little kid watching my dad shave with his razor. I was like, oh wow. You know, pretending I put shaving cream on my face and I didn't have a blade in the razor. Obviously, you'd do the same thing. It's like comfort food for your face. That old school feel and vibe and look to it. But the technology is absolutely stunning. The fact that those blades are as good as they are, as thin as they are, and like you're talking about the pricing, it's just every time I hear you talk about it, it's like, how do they do that? How do they do that? You know, you can't buy anything for $2 or $3 or $5 hardly anymore. I couldn't get a cup of coffee for $5 anymore. And you're talking about razor blades. It's just nuts. It's a great opportunity, and I love it. I use mine. I like to look in the mirror and look at the old school look of it. I'm kind of proud of it. I leave it out. It's in my bathroom. I don't put it away. I kind of leave it out because it's just cool looking.
I agree. I leave mine, like I've got the stand. I bought the stand. I mean, listen, here's the real deal. Guys, we vet our sponsors, so they'll send us something to try. We see if we like it. I liked it so much. I was impressed with it so much. I talked it around the office so much. My dad said, okay, I'll buy one. And I said, well, hey, let me put the promo code in for you because, look, I want us to get credit. So I go to type it in, and I finally saw how much the razor cost, and I thought, this is the greatest product. I mean, we have to talk about this product forever and ever. I don't want to tell you how much it is now, but I will tell you this. You're going to be shocked. Because when I heard, I knew the deal. All right, razors are $3 to $5 a year. So that means the razor must be very expensive. That is not the case. So affordable, I said, shit, Dad, I'm getting you this razor, but I'm going to make sure I get this little stand for me. I've got mine displayed in the bathroom. I love it. Seriously, go check it out right now. hensonshaving.com/83weeks. So listen, you said a minute ago, Eric, that you weren't really putting the entire roster together. What were they asking you for up front? Like, we need you to help us secure Flair and Hogan. We need you to help us cut some promotional items so we can put them out in the market to sell tickets. Maybe we need you to do some media. And what else did they need you to do?
Well, I had to, I put together the agreements, the talent agreements, the contracts. And that was basically it. It was, get Hulk on board. Hulk absolutely wouldn't have done it without Ric. So I had the conversation with Ric. I think Hulk had the first one, and I followed up and worked out a deal with Ric. And then, the Nasty Boys, and like I said, Brutus, the freaking Barber Beefcake, and a couple others that we put together. I put those deals together. That was basically it. Negotiated them, and that was basically it. Everything else they took care of out of Australia.
So it makes the Observer, Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, who've been talking about starting a promotion and doing overseas touring for 7 years, finally announced to start the Hulkamania promotion with 4 shows for Australia in November as a part of a ton of news this past week involving Hogan. It's been noted that this will depend on advanced sales when tickets go on sale September 24th. As someone close to Hogan noted, it's all going to depend on how the advances go. But others have noted Hogan has signed a deal that would leave him with a major financial penalty if he was the one to pull out of the tour.
Not true.
They had been talking about doing a European tour of late as the debut of the new group and pulled out of it. The dates announced are November 21st in Melbourne, November 24th in Perth, November 26th in Brisbane, and November 28th in Sydney, all running the same large arenas as WWE runs in those cities. So you set the record straight right away. If Hogan would have pulled out, no major penalty.
I don't know where no, it's none of anything that Tapeworm said in what you just quoted was true. None of it.
Yes,
Not even close to it. We hadn't been talking about, I mean,
Right.
Look, independent promoters would come to Hulk or myself from time to time, and there'd be a conversation, as I told you a few moments ago, maybe once or twice a year, somebody would call, but they weren't real. There was never any real discussions about doing anything internationally. They weren't real. So Dave's reporting, if you want to call it reporting, is absolutely a lie. None of that was true. And as far as a penalty in Hulk Hogan's contract, absolutely untrue. Absolutely untrue. I don't know where or why, even in particular, they would come up with stuff like this. Like, I don't get it. But no, not even remotely true.
Timeline wise, is this the same timeline where you're also working on an Impact deal?
Yes, that's right. Yes, it was, because we had started the discussion. I forgot all about that. That's why I love doing this show. You remind me of things that I completely forgot about. But we had started the discussions for the Australia tour, I think, either shortly before or shortly after we got serious about TNA. And I had to make it clear to TNA that we're going to be doing this tour, because TNA was also talking about doing an Australian tour. There had been some conversation in TNA about that. And I had to let them know that we were doing it, and it wasn't going to be with TNA. I mean, we weren't going to involve TNA in any way, shape, or form, because the deal we'd already begun structuring the deal, and trying to include TNA wouldn't work. So yeah, it was right around that same time.
The Observer would say at least 30 dates are on the tentative plans, including open up several new markets overseas WWE's never appeared in. The thought process behind it is similar to the concert world, where huge American stars of the 60s and 70s can still go overseas and draw huge crowds, even though they could no longer do that in the U.S. Of course, concerts and pro wrestling are different forms of entertainment, as acts from the 70s and 80s draw huge on the road in the concert business. While nostalgia has some magic in wrestling, it pales in comparison to music. What was the master plan here? Do you think these Condon folks, they wanted to start a much bigger promotion and opportunity than just this Australian tour?
I never really had that conversation with them. You know, I think the conversation was really focused on this tour, and if it was successful, perhaps there could be other business down the road. But again, nothing ever meaningful. No discussions that really mattered ever took place about what we were going to do afterwards. Obviously, everybody was hopeful and optimistic and wanted it to do well. And if there would be more opportunities afterwards, great. But there was never there was never 30 dates, tentatively booked or anything like that.
So talk to me about Ric Flair. We said up front that you felt like, or Hulk felt like, Ric Flair was vital to this whole operation, what you're going to try to do here. Is it a function of they come to you and Hulk, then you guys have to think of an opponent, and he says, well, it's got to be Flair? Is that the way it goes?
Yeah, they were interested in Hulk. They were not interested. The only reason anybody reached out to me was because they were interested in Hulk Hogan. Hulk, for the same reasons that Hulk was adamant about working with Ric Flair when he first came to WCW, because Hulk knew that Rick was someone that he could trust. When I say trust, I mean, he felt 100% comfortable with in the ring, that wasn't going to go out and try to take advantage of him or try to get themselves over at his expense. Hulk really, really trusted Rick. And the same was true when this Australia tour came up. There was no question. If Hulk was going to wrestle, there was only one person he was going to wrestle, and that was going to be Ric Flair.
The thing that I want to just add context to is at this point, Rick's last match was his retirement match against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. That went down March 30th, 2008. You guys are going to have Ric Flair step between the ropes again in Australia for the very first time on November 21st, 2009. So over 18 months later, but still relatively fresh in our minds, the Ric Flair's last match. Do you make that pitch? How does that go? What was Rick's reaction to? I know you just had the greatest send-off in history, but what if we did it again?
It really didn't come up much. It just didn't. It was, and I guess it probably should have. And maybe, Rick and Hulk may have had conversations about that.
Right.
But when I reached out to Rick to put the deal together, it was not something that even came up casually.
Wow. It's written in the Observer here. The idea is that now that things are public, is to use Hogan and Ric Flair names to try and sell shows to major promoters overseas. At this point, there are no deals on the table for running in the U.S. or filming a traditional wrestling television show. It's only logical that they could get a television deal in the U.S. that pays them, similar to Spike's deal with TNA, that would change, particularly since the tapes could be used to better market overseas events. Do you think there's someone on, maybe Meltzer had some sort of relationship with these Condon folks? Because none of this that he's reporting here feels like it's even in the remote same realm of what you're talking about as far as.
And that's what mystifies me. I genuinely think that Dave Meltzer's got issues. I don't know what they are, but when I hear some of the stuff that he wrote back in 2009, and I know I was in it, I was in the middle of it. And to hear this fabrication, these lies, and this is not a distortion. This is not an exaggeration. These are just flat out lies. And I ask myself, why? Why would you write stuff like this? I mean, it's not that entertaining. Where, I don't know, man. I can't explain it. But no, we weren't considering using Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair to, generate business over. This was a one-off deal. That's all. It was all it was ever discussed being. There was no discussions between Hulk and I about doing international tours. We were in TNA. We just signed a deal with TNA. So this is such, and I know you get tired of hearing me because I know you feel differently about Dave than I do, but this is, I don't even know how to talk about it anymore. It's so bizarre. The guy is just nuts. He's making shit up for this. Maybe he feels the need to just fill up because he often talks about the fact that he's over 10,000 words, no periods, no commas, no grammar, but 10,000 words. And maybe he was just filling his word quota and making shit up as he went. I don't know, but none of it was true.
Well, it's written here that Flair signs a 3-year contract with the group, and he's going to be Hulk Hogan's main opponent in the main events on the first tour, if not going forward, and likely pushed as the number 2 star with the group. So listen, you maybe don't know exactly what the terms of Flair's deal was, but.
No, I do. I did the deal. There was no 3-year deal.
Okay.
There was no 3-year deal. That's what I mean. There's no, because sometimes, memories fade and, facts get a little distorted, not because anybody has any bad intentions or
right.
some nefarious reasons. I mean, just time goes by and, you remember things differently. I'm guilty or a victim of that myself frequently, but when you're this far off base, something else is going on there. But there was no 3-year deal. There were no options. This was a one-off deal. If it would have went great, we probably would have had other discussions, but there was no 3-year deal or discussions with other promoters. I mean, think about it. We were under contract to TNA. The only reason that we went over there, having already been signed to TNA, is that the discussions and negotiations took place prior to us getting to TNA. right? The ball had started moving downfield before we were official at TNA. But once we were at TNA, Hulk was exclusive to TNA. So was I, as far as wrestling is concerned. So just on the face of that fact, doesn't it kind of tell you that this guy's lying through his teeth? I mean, isn't it obvious? Is it only me?
You wrote in your book, Grateful, how important it was for Hulk to surround himself with people he trusted. So I'm curious, the rest of this tour, if you will, how do we flush out the rest of that roster?
Well, as I said, Hulk had a couple guys that he wanted to bring over, and part of it was he wanted to have fun. He was going through a lot personally, had been through a lot personally, and obviously his physical situation was bad, putting it mildly, and figured as long as I'm going over there, I want to go over there and have as much fun as possible, which is why he wanted the Nasty Boys. For better or worse, you can say whatever you want about the Nasty Boys, but they were fun to be around most of the time. He wanted people that he knew, and he wanted to have a good time. But the rest of the roster, really, Reno put it together. There were a lot of, I think who else was on the card that we put together?
Well, so the first one in Melbourne is Nick Dinsmore, who we know as Eugene, the Pimp Father, which is actually Godfather.
Mm-hmm.
They would take on Rock of Love, which was Billy Blade and Caden Anthony. Brutus Beefcake would beat Heidenreich. Spartan 3000 would beat Shannon Moore. Spartan 3000 was Matt Cross or M-Dog 20. The Nasty Boys are going to take on the Vampire Warrior, who we know as Gangrel, and Black Pearl.
Black Pearl, that was Reno's wrestling name, Black Pearl.
Mr. Anderson is going to take on Sean Morley, we know as the former Val Venus. Brian Christopher is going to team up with Kishi, who is Rikishi, to take on Orlando Jordan and the former Umaga. And then in the main event, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. So that's night one. That's quite a crew here, man.
Yeah, and again, Reno put that, and Rikishi, I'm sure, had a big hand in that. They put the majority of that together. I had never met Ken Anderson before. Obviously, I knew Shannon Moore, but a lot of those names were people that I had never worked with before, and didn't know. I knew who Godfather was, obviously, but I never worked with him really closely. But yeah, they had all been working with Rikishi and Reno, and that's how they ended up on that card. I brought Hulk, I brought Rick, Nasty Boys, and Brutus. That was the extent of my roster contribution.
Hulk is coming off major back surgery. He's got an artificial hip and knee. He's 56 years old. I'm not saying this to be funny, and I'm sure some of our listeners who classify themselves as Hulk Hogan haters are going to think I'm trying to be funny, but I'm not. How does Hulk work the ring rust off? How does he get ready to train for this and make sure that this is a performance that he expects? Not necessarily that the fans expects, but he expects. Like it feels as if he wouldn't want to just slide in the ring for the first time in front of everybody. And I know that that's what people thought Rick was going to do this past July in Nashville, but he had been working a lot to get ready for that. Was Hulk in his head about, can I do this? I got to get back in there. I got to run the ropes. I need to do some walkthroughs, some drills. What's the thinking?
I think he was really nervous about that. Beyond nervous. I think he was frightened because he didn't know how his back was going to hold up. He wasn't able to work out. He wasn't able to train. He could barely freaking walk at that point. He couldn't sit for more than 20 minutes at a time. He'd have to get up and try to move. And then after about 15, 20 minutes of moving around, he had to sit down again because he couldn't keep moving. It was a really bad situation for him. So no, he wasn't able to work out. He wasn't able to get into the ring and bounce off the ropes a little bit or take a bump or, he wasn't able to do anything. He could, like I said, he could barely walk for more than 20 minutes. And I think because he knew he was as compromised as he was physically, there was a fear that, he could get in the ring and he could blow his back out and not be able to continue. There was a real fear, but he did it anyway. Imagine he probably medicated. He was on a lot of medication at the time, prescribed, nothing illegal, but I'm sure he pilled up, did the best that he could, and hoped for the best. But he was concerned about it.
This is going to be, we talked about how this is Ric's first match since March of 08, WrestleMania 24. This will be Hulk's first match since April of 07 when he wrestled Big Show in Memphis. Were you at that Memphis show?
I don't think so. No, I was not.
It's just fascinating to me to how these sort of deals come together. The Observer would say, there are plans to film a reality show with the two of them, described as a real-life version of The Odd Couple, one of the classic television series of all time, where two opposites in this case may not share an apartment, but each coming off a divorce are forced to work with each other to get back on their feet and perhaps try to avoid driving each other crazy. Hogan and Flair have had their ups and downs over the years, but have put on good terms of late, with Hogan even appearing in the pilot that was shot of the Ric Flair reality show. The deal includes a provision where Hogan and Flair will be together on all wrestling-related ventures during the period of the contract. Now, listen, that is intriguing because we know that you, sir, have put together over a dozen television shows. And a Hulk Hogan reality show, well, that seems like something you would have been excited about. An Odd Couple of him and Flair. Do you remember this ever even being discussed, or is this more inaccuracy?
I don't remember it at all. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. Somebody else, you'd have to ask Rick. I wasn't aware that there was a conversation about a Ric Flair reality show back then, but maybe there was. I certainly wasn't involved in it. I think it's safe to say that Hulk would have absolutely not been interested in doing it. He had come off the Hogan Knows Best reality show, and I think he regretted ever doing that show, probably beginning 5 minutes after it started, and it only got worse. So there was absolutely no appetite on Hulk's part to have a Hulk Hogan reality show of any kind. That doesn't mean he wouldn't have appeared on somebody else's, and if there was a pilot that somebody did with Rick, I'm sure he'd show up, but I just can't imagine that there was any serious long-term conversations about it.
He was done after Hogan Knows Best.
Yeah. He didn't even want to watch reality shows after that.
What was his takeaway? I mean, I know you don't speak for him, but what was your impression of how he felt about Hogan Knows Best and the whole reality experiment with his family?
I think he regretted it. It put a lot of stress on the family. And people think, having a reality show being produced in your home is about as intrusive as you can possibly get. You've got 10, 15 people running around your house 12, 15 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week because you're on a tight schedule. And it's a lot of work. And it's intrusive as hell. And I think it put a lot of pressure on the kids. It created opportunity as well, but it also created issues. I think he just regretted it from day one. Had a very bad taste in his mouth about it.
Well, something you won't regret is using our friends at HelloFresh. Something new for everybody every single week. That's what I like about HelloFresh. Seriously, you've got so many options. My wife and I, we find ourselves getting into a bit of a rut at times. Well, you can take your pick here, man. Keep your taste buds on their toes. Over 40 different weekly recipes. They've even got 100 items to round out your order. All the things like snacks and easy lunches, even desserts and pantry necessities. You can get it all from HelloFresh. What I like best about HelloFresh, though, not only do they keep us out of the rut, they make it so easy to cook at home. When the wife and I have to go grocery shopping together, we always wind up buying too much, and we wind up throwing a bunch out. We're just wasting time and wasting money. The pre-portioned ingredients mean there's very little waste, and it's cheaper than when we go to the grocery store. That's right. HelloFresh is cheaper than the grocery store. Not only that, it's cheaper than takeout too. I've seen it's 25%. That's been my experience. 25% cheaper than takeout. And by the way, you're getting everything you need here. They've got something for everybody. Fit and wholesome. veggie, whatever your lifestyle, man, they got it. But you'll always be trying something new and interesting and fresh. Like this May, they're celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So for a limited time, you can try all kinds of stuff that I can't even pronounce. But I'm excited to cook it because they send you such easy to follow directions. Eric, not only do they have them printed, they got pictures, brother. I can follow along with pictures. Okay, so put that in there. Got it. And here's my favorite part of this. When they say HelloFresh, they mean it. Guys, this stuff was on the farm less than a week before it was at your house. Think about that. From the farm to your front door in less than a week, it's always going to be fresh. It's been a great experience for me and the wife. We got out of our rut. We were cooking together. I wasn't overwhelmed, and I have to admit, I was nervous about that. I'm pretty good on the grill, but when it comes time to everything inside, I'm like, am I doing this right? These instructions made it so easy, and it paid dividends. Go cook with your wife. You'll see what I'm talking about. Head now to HelloFresh.com/83weeks22 and use our code 83weeks22. Buddy, they're going to get you 16 free meals plus free shipping. You heard me. 16 free meals plus free shipping when you go to HelloFresh.com/83weeks22. Remember to use our code 83weeks22. We love HelloFresh, and you will too. You'll find out why they're America's #1 meal kit. What's you and Mrs. B's experience been like with HelloFresh, Eric?
It's been great, and we love to cook. Mrs. B's, she's better. Like you, I'm really good on. Well, I think I'm pretty good on the grill. I'll still ruin something every once in a while by experimenting, but for the most part, I'm pretty damn good on a grill. Lori's much better in the house, but something you said made me chuckle. We love cooking together.
Yes.
I mean, it's fun. You know, you crank up it's what we do on the weekends. You know, my life has kind of calmed down quite a bit. So on the weekends, man, we crank up the tunes, play a little bit of music. We do our cooking. We have a great time, and we have a blast doing it. But I like HelloFresh because of the other thing that you said. It's, 7 days from the farm to your refrigerator. It's kind of a big damn deal because a lot of times you go into the supermarket and, you can look at the sell-on date, but you don't have no idea how long that stuff's been sitting in a truck or sitting in a warehouse or sitting in the back of a grocery store waiting to get put out on the shelf. And fresh is better. And that's the thing that I like about HelloFresh the most is the freshness.
HelloFresh.com/83weeks22. Use our promo code 83weeks22. You'll be glad you did. Okay, so the Observer would continue. There's some uncertainty from the new company side because Flair has made it clear he's going to call Vince McMahon before signing the contract and didn't sign until Vince McMahon gave him his blessings. Supposedly, McMahon told him, make sure you get your money up front. In a sense, that was also a sign that McMahon wasn't looking to bring Flair back as he didn't make a counteroffer to keep him from going on the tour. Do you remember there being a discussion with Rick that I need to run it past Vince first?
I don't. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It could have. And it kind of would make sense because I know that Rick's always respected Vince. And I can't imagine that Rick would have made a move like that without at least giving Vince a heads up. So it makes sense, but I wasn't a part of it. Never came up in a conversation.
We've always heard that Vince wants to shut down or undermine competition. I mean, even going back to the Crockett days, he would try to, counter program them. Was that a concern going in here that you thought, man, if we announce and we got some momentum and we got Hulk and Flair, maybe they'll go on the offensive? I mean, he did once upon a time with the whole Nacho Man stuff. And I know this isn't a television property. It's not necessarily apples to apples, but was there a concern that maybe they would try to run Australia and undercut this or sign away some of the talent, just try to snuff it out up front? Was that ever even discussed with the event promoters? Did they know that was a possibility based on the past?
I don't think no, it wasn't discussed. And the reason it wasn't discussed is because the Condons had a very good relationship with all the major venues and had already locked them up. So no, it wasn't a concern at all.
I believe the story is that you guys were guaranteed half your money up front and the other half held in escrow. Do I have that right? What was the circumstance?
Yeah, that's where it got dicey. The money did go into escrow. The 50% balance did go into escrow. And we did get half of our money up front, but the promoters, unfortunately,
they lost their ass, and they didn't put all the money into the promotion themselves. They had other investors that were financially involved. Because the event didn't draw as well as everybody thought it would. I think they thought they were going to sell out some of these major venues like in Sydney and Melbourne, and they didn't. They did well. They did okay, but they didn't sell out. And I think there was so much money. And by the way, they did not spare any expense. They flew most of us, a lot of us were in first class on Virgin Airlines. The hotels they put us in were the nicest hotels in the market. You know, we were in Sydney for a couple of days. It was an amazing hotel. So they spared no expense. Again, biggest, most expensive venues you could find. They did a lot of marketing, a lot of average. So they spent a ton of money. And I think they spent a ton of money anticipating sellouts, and they didn't get them. So as a result of that, there were issues with the people that helped finance the tour, which ended up in litigation. And as a result, we didn't get the 50% that was held in escrow. It's still sitting in escrow somewhere. They can't get it out, and neither can we. I hired an attorney, and we were going to take legal action. We probably would have won eventually, but suing somebody in Australia is really not something that you want to do unless there's a significant amount of money involved. Yeah, simply didn't understand the civil litigation differences between Australian law and U.S. law. You know, my understanding or my thought process was, as long as we perform to the contract and we meet the obligations that we agreed to in the contract, that we'd receive the balance of our 50%. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. We delivered. We did everything we were supposed to do. We showed up. We performed. We did well. You know, everybody was on time. Everybody did everything that they were supposed to do. But unfortunately, again, because of the investors that lost money as a result of the tour, they ended up getting into litigation with the Condons, and that litigation prevented us from being able to get the balance of our money out of escrow. And had I known more about Australian civil litigation, I would have probably avoided the escrow situation, but I didn't. And as a result, Hulk everybody else got paid. Hulk didn't get. Hulk only got a portion of what he was supposed to get. But
so Rick got paid.
Rick got paid. Everybody else got paid. I didn't get paid. Hulk only got a portion of what he was supposed to get paid. But the rest of the talent did get paid.
Wait, you didn't get paid at all?
No, I didn't.
You were going to take yours on that final payment,
Yep.
And then just didn't get it at all.
Right.
My goodness.
But I had a great time.
Well, hey, I'm that's the right perspective to have, I'm sure. But man, so you're saying somewhere you believe your cash and Hogan's cash is still in escrow somewhere, and nobody can touch it. It's just in an account somewhere.
The last time I checked, which was a while ago, yeah, it was still. My attorney said, yeah, it's still in the escrow. Nobody can take it out. The Condons couldn't get to it, and neither could we. And there was also, believe it or not, this was taped for television. It was produced for television by Fox in Australia. And part of the deal was that we were going to receive revenue from the television. I don't think it was on pay-per-view. I don't think it was pay-per-view, but it was filmed for television by Fox, and a significant production too, by the way. It wasn't two guys and a camera. It was a significant production. But when we didn't get paid, we also put a stop to that. So there's a television show sitting in a can somewhere with a Ric Flair Hulk Hogan match, Umaga, all the names that you mentioned, because this was Umaga passed away shortly after this tour. It was his last series of matches, I believe. But yeah, it's sitting in a can somewhere in Australia.
It's unbelievable that I didn't really know this, but you're exactly right. Umaga's last matches are on this Hulkamania tour. That's crazy to think about. Hogan's going to do a ton of media for this, as you might imagine. He's going to attend some rugby games, travel all over the country to promote it. I mean, when you see just the marketing plan and you know the investment as far as the air travel, the hotels, and what have you, but when you see just the media attack, the media strategy, did you think they were going to pull this off, or were you, I don't know, a little suspect all along?
No, I really thought they would. Again, because they were serious and experienced and successful promoters. This wasn't their first, it was their first wrestling rodeo, but it certainly wasn't their first rodeo in terms of being promoters. So they had the credibility. Number one, they had the resources. They did have a great marketing plan. There was a ton of media associated with it. And we believed, all of us believed, including them, especially them and their investors, that the wrestling market there was ready for this tour and was anxious to see Hulk Hogan in person, because as we talked about earlier, it never happened before. So all the indications were there. There was nothing that made me go, oh, I don't know if these guys really know what they're doing. Quite the opposite. Every experience that I had with them up until it came time to get paid have been extremely positive.
Well, listen, it's written in the Observer. I hate to bring it up, but I feel like we should. It's discussed in the Observer that both Hogan and Flair, well, let me just read it. While it's sad that both Flair and Hogan have to return to the ring at their respective ages, financially, both need to make money, and it's the best method out there for them to make money, especially if they can parlay it into the reality show idea, get that exposure, and try and tour. Both have had expensive divorces, I'll say. And in Hogan's case, huge legal bills from his divorce case and the Graziano case, as well as the money spent trying to launch his daughter's singing career. Flair has a reported $22,000 monthly bill for alimony alone to ex-wives. So lots written about the divorces and how costly they are. And Hogan's got the legal front and Brooks trying to launch. Was this, listen, you've known Hulk Hogan at this point for a long, long time and been really, really tight friends. Is this the first time maybe he's in a more precarious financial spot, but just because he does have the lawsuit and the singing career and the divorce? I mean, the divorce with Linda has been written about and discussed a lot. Maybe one of the worst divorces maybe the worst divorce in wrestling history.
Yeah, I don't, maybe, probably, if it's not, it should be. I don't know. But Hulk wasn't hurting for money. Yeah, and I don't know what Rick's situation was back then.
Right.
But Hulk wasn't doing it for the money. Don't get me wrong. Hulk likes money and certainly did back then. But he was not, despite, and nothing that Dave wrote is not true. It was an expensive divorce, very expensive divorce. There were a lot of other legal bills associated with other things that were going on, the Graziano case that you described. So yeah, there was a lot of expenses going on, but Hulk still had enough money that he didn't do it for the money.
He wanted to be in control of his own destiny. He wanted to go out.
I don't know, Conrad. I sometimes it's hard for me to this day to figure out what makes Hulk tick. And he probably has a hard time too occasionally. I think for Hulk, it was a place he'd never been. I think to a large degree, or some degree, I should say, I think Hulk just wanted to experience that rush again. Talked about this before, and it's not unique to Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair or anybody else. But I think when you're a performer and you perform at the level that a Hulk Hogan did, or a Ric Flair, or, a lot of others, it's kind of defines who you are in your mind. It's a part of you. And to be able to go back out there and experience that rush one more time and that connection to the audience is something that drives a lot of performers. I think it's the reasons, you know, Rolling Stones still tour, you know, Stevie Nicks still tours. Why? Not because they need the money, because it's part of who they are. And they feel more complete when they're out there on a stage. And I think the same is true for people like Hulk and Rick and anybody else that's performed at that level for as long as they have.
I'm just curious. I think a lot of people expected when they hear your name attached to this, the Diamond Dallas Page is going to be part of this. Why wasn't he?
I don't know. I don't think there was a reason. I think, you know, we sat down and Hulk said, here's the guys I'd like to bring along. And Page's name wasn't on that list. And it wasn't like we needed to fill out the roster because Rikishi and Reno were going to basically supply everybody that we needed to complete the roster. But, you know, there was no reason. It wasn't like I brought Page's name up and Hulk said no, or I didn't call Page and he decided he didn't want to do it. It was nothing like that. It just didn't make sense at that point in time.
Just as a reminder, he had been out of the ring since 2006, but he would pop back up, do a match in 2010, a match in 2011. And then, of course, we know he's been in a couple WWE Battle Royals since, and even came back maybe 3 years ago and did something on Dynamite for AEW. So I don't know. It just feels like could have been maybe DDP's last hurrah too.
Yeah, I'm thinking back now, trying to recall, you know, some of my conversations with Page, because we were still pretty close at that point in time, even though we didn't live in the same neighborhood any longer, but we were still pretty good friends. And he would come out to LA occasionally, and or I would come out to LA occasionally on business, and he was living there at the time, I think. And we got together a few times, but I was always under the impression that Page was really over it. And I think he had a couple of injuries himself that he just didn't want to aggravate any further. So I don't think there was a strong desire on Page's part to actually get back in the ring.
Let's talk about Jeff Hardy. It's written in the Observer that there were at least discussions with Jeff Hardy. The idea maybe Jeff Hardy versus Umaga. Those are big names, especially in this era. And Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, those could sort of be maybe your co-main events. Of course, send everybody home with Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. But Jeff Hardy doesn't wind up being on this tour either. Do you remember having discussions about that? Or was
that might have been Rikishi and Reno may have.
Okay.
I didn't have any conversations at all with Jeff.
Bill Goldberg jumps in on Twitter and says 0 plans to join Hogan's tour. The old man wants all the money for himself, plus 3 reality shows on tap. What'd you think when you read or heard that?
You know, it was kind of like, why? You know, why? We didn't offer to bring Bill over. Nobody approached Bill. I remember reading that and thinking, why would you say that? I mean, right. Hulk Hogan was the reason that Bill Goldberg ended up making a lot of money.
Yes.
Hulk took Bill under his wing. Hulk made sure that Bill Goldberg had a great attorney in Henry Holmes, who was Hulk's attorney. Hulk did a lot for Bill. And it just struck me as odd that Bill would say something like that about Hulk, even though it wasn't horribly disparaging or anything, but calling him an old man and suggesting he wanted to take all the money. I don't know, it just seemed kind of out of place to me.
Well, especially when you consider that sentence in the current context. Bill Goldberg has said he wants to do a 4-city retirement tour, and he wants to self-promote it. When I heard that,
wait a minute, did he say this recently?
Yeah, right now, Eric, in 2023.
I've been out of touch, man. I've been traveling. I've been paying attention. So he wants to do a 4-city retirement tour and promote it himself.
Self-promoted 4-city retirement tour. Put it out there last week. Wants the buzz. Wants everybody talking about it. And I think to myself, Imagine if somebody that Bill wrestled on this most recent run that welcomed him back into WWE, who maybe is no longer in WWE. I don't even know who that would be. But imagine if someone were to tweet out, "Zero plan to join Bill's tour. The old man wants all the money for himself. Plus 3 reality shows on tap." It feels like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, once upon a time, Chris Jericho would go just dump all over Hulk Hogan and say, "Oh, he's an old guy hogging up all the TV time."
That's ironic, isn't it?
Fast forward. And now Bill Goldberg started doing the same thing here back in 2009. But here we are in 2023. And he says he wants to self-promote a 4-city retirement tour. 4-city retirement tour. Hulkamania Australia was 4 shows. Guys, let's maybe be better to each other and stop shitting on each other. Like, this is history repeating itself here, is it not?
Yeah, it is. This is a shocker to me. I jokingly said, well, I wasn't joking. I was just being me. But if I was Tony Khan, I'd book CM Punk and Bill Goldberg. That'd be fun to watch. I'd actually fly over to the UK to watch that one live, see that one in person. It'd be fun. But I jokingly, I said it jokingly because to me, I can't imagine if Bill Goldberg he doesn't need the money.
Right.
I mean, what's the motivation?
He's been quoted as saying he wanted a proper retirement match, and that was supposed to be a handshake deal with him and Vince, and he never got the proper retirement match. So he's going to do a 4-city retirement tour that he self-promotes himself.
God, good luck, Bill. Bill, if you want, Bill, you've got my number. Give me a shout. I won't charge you a nickel. Let me talk you out of that. Let me just talk you out of that. Let me be your consultant. And let me explain to you all the reasons why you don't want to do it, Bill.
Hypothetically, if Bill were to do it, Bill would need a story, right? I mean, he couldn't just come out and book matches with free agents and think that's going to sell an arena, right?
Not at all.
Yeah,
not at all. Again, I don't know what his motivation is. Maybe somebody's talking to him. Maybe he's got partners that are really excited about this. I don't know, but
Rick,
man, what a horrible idea. What a horrible idea.
It's Ric Flair. He saw, well, wait a minute. If Ric Flair can damn near sell out Municipal Auditorium at his advanced age, I'm fresh off WWE TV. I'm sure that's the thinking, and I get it.
But I'm going to say this, and I like Bill personally. I get along with Bill, but Bill's not Ric Flair.
Yeah, well said.
He's just not. And that doesn't.
You don't mean that negative either.
No,
I know where you're coming from. You're just saying there's not the emotional connection for decades and decades with.
Exactly. There's not generations of Bill Goldberg fans out there. There are generations of Ric Flair fans out there.
Yes.
Ric Flair is arguably as popular today in some respects as he's ever been.
Yeah.
And largely because he's got this amazingly charismatic personality, but he's also got generations of fans, people that have grown up watching him. Bill, comparatively speaking, has been in the business for 5 minutes.
Right.
When you compare him to someone like Ric Flair. So I hope he gets a lot of money up front. Let's just put it that way. And, when you talk about, and this is just if I'm trying to imagine if I was Bill Goldberg, well, what would I want? First of all, if I was Bill Goldberg and I have Bill Goldberg's money, the last thing that I would want to do is get into a wrestling ring at this stage. No, it's just because Bill's an amazing athlete. Again, this is going to sound negative and I don't mean it to be, but it just is what it is. Bill is not physically what he was 10, 15, 20 years ago. Nobody is.
Right.
And Bill didn't have the kind of repertoire and experience and skill sets to begin with. He didn't need them. He broke into the business at a point in time and he was a certain type of character and we were able to build upon that and turn him into this monster that he became, but not because he had a tremendous amount of skill set.
Right.
Right. He was a character and a great one. to get into the ring now at this stage of his life without that skill set, having never had it to begin with, I just wish he wouldn't do it. And here's the other thing: you want to be remembered for being at your peak, right? No, and I used to feel this way about Hulk too. You know, I tried to have this conversation with him a few times, but it's a hard conversation to have with someone, especially someone that you respect and you like. You just don't want to see him go out there and be less than you remember them being at their peak. It's the same reason why, you know, when Mike Tyson, you know, was going to get back into the ring with the exhibition, I'm a huge Mike Tyson fan, by the way, and have been, but I didn't want to see a lesser version of Mike Tyson get back in the ring. And I don't want to see a lesser version of Bill Goldberg get back into the ring. And again, if he doesn't need the money, which I can't imagine he does, I don't know why he would do it. I really don't. Rick, I understand, you know, Rick's one of those people, as is Hulk, one of those people that such a big part of who they are, their self-value, the way they see themselves, the person they see when they look in the mirror, so much of it is that wrestling character that that's been a part of them for the majority of their lives. I get why they don't want to give that up. I do. But that's not Bill Goldberg. Bill Goldberg never really liked the wrestling business to begin with. It was an opportunity, and he liked the money, and he, you know, at that point in time, he was good at it. But it's not like he had a passion for the business. So it's just odd to me that he wants to do it. But, you know, hey, people change. Who knows? Maybe Bill realized how much he loves the wrestling business or how important it is to him. And that could possibly be his motivation. I don't know. Just seems a little strange to me. Yeah, Bill's been pretty outspoken, you know, in the past about the wrestling business and what he will and what he won't do and all that. So this one strikes me as being really interesting.
Well, I tell you what, if Bill really is going to self-promote some shows, my man might need a business plan. And our friends over at Impera, they could probably help him out with that, right, Eric?
Dude, I love Impera. What a great tool. And Bill, if you're thinking about it, if you're going to put together a business plan, don't do it without Impera, Bill. Please don't do it without Impera, because Impera can allow you to track all of the things you need to track to make sure that every aspect of your promotion is going to hit its target. Without doing it, it's hit or miss. And it's the same true. Nobody knows more about business, Conrad, than you do, and you've been extremely successful. But we both know you have to have a great business plan in order to launch a business, but you also have to have the tools to track your progress and to, as I say, you know, plan your work and work your plan. If you're going to work that plan, you've got to be able to measure all of the pillars, all of the benchmarks that you need on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. You need to be able to keep track of it. Whether you're a one-man band, it's just you and your idea, and you're in your garage or in your basement manufacturing widgets and shipping them out the door, or you've got a company with 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 or more people, and you have to communicate all the different aspects of your business plan every single day to your team in order to stay on track and fix things that are wrong. Sometimes you sit down, you figure out a business plan and say, okay, we're going to spend this much money on marketing and we're going to expect this much of a return on that investment. Well, if that marketing plan isn't working, you've got to adjust. But if you don't know it's not working because you're not tracking your progress in that particular area, you're wasting a lot of money or losing a lot of money. And Impera gives you the tools, and it's so easy. Someone like me can figure it out. Literally, you sign up, they get on the phone with you, they walk you through the onboarding process so that your dashboard is your Impera business plan dashboard is customized to your business. And they'll walk you through it all. It's easy. It costs less than 2 cups of coffee a month. You can't go wrong. If you're thinking about starting a business, or if you have a business of your own, or you're working for somebody that needs a better tool to track your progress, reach out to the people at Impera. You'll be glad you did. You can call me, you can thank me, you can send me emails, whatever. You'll be forever in my debt for turning you on to Impera because they're that damn good.
Sign up now and receive free onboarding, your first 14 days for free, and 24/7 support. Get ahead of the game and save 20% on your subscription by using the code WrestleBiz. That's WrestleBiz at checkout. Launch your business plan faster and with less effort than ever before. Visit Empira.com/Eric today to start your journey to success. That's EMPIRAA.com/Eric. Empira.com/Eric. So listen, just like we suspected, WWE starts to promote their European tour the next year. Once you guys announce, they start promoting, hey, don't forget, WWE's coming. And supposedly, they're even reaching out to some people who were advertised on your tour, including Umaga. Do you ever hear that they're trying to talk to some of the folks on the tour about not working this show and coming back home?
Zero. I don't think that ever happened. I don't think, I mean, I don't know. I got to be careful how I say this stuff, but I can't imagine. Look, the WWE had been touring Europe for a long time. It's not like somebody woke up and said, oh my gosh, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair over in Australia, we better hurry up and figure out a way to do Europe. Or we should go out and announce Europe so we've established that we're coming back and people aren't excited about Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair possibly coming to Europe, which was never discussion anyway. But no, I think this is just more Dave filling pages full of nonsense. I don't think any of it's true.
TNA was scheduled to do a tour over in Australia in February. Ultimately, it winds up being canceled. And before tickets go on sale, you and Hulk even appear on the Footy show. Any memories of being on that show?
No, we did a lot of stuff though. I mean, we did there was a lot of media. So the fact that I don't remember one doesn't surprise me or shouldn't surprise the audience who's been listening to me. But no, I don't remember that show, but we did a lot, went to rugby games. We did talk shows. We did a lot of stuff.
When tickets first go on sale, what was the reaction internally? Were there projections? Were you guys disappointed? Were you thinking you were on track? What do you recall about that?
We weren't tracking the ticket sales. The promoters were, and there wasn't a lot of, we were on a guarantee. So there was no real need for us to track ticket sales. And I think most of the conversations early on were all extremely positive. The ones I did have with Michael Condon, I didn't talk to his dad too much, but I talked to Michael a lot. Were all very positive. But as you might expect, your initial response when you go on sale, your hardcore fans, your most avid fans are going to be very aggressive and excited and jump on. It was towards, as you get closer to the date, that you realize you're only 60% sold or 70% sold, and that's when you start scrambling. But we didn't have a lot of those conversations, again, because we were all on a guarantee.
I should mention that in late October, before these shows ever happen, it's announced that you and Hulk have signed with TNA. Do you remember the Condon people being upset or disappointed that as you're just weeks away from this event, you're announced as going somewhere else? I mean, I know that you said this was always supposed to be a one-off, but do they view that as good publicity, or did they take it as a negative that, oh man, that means, well, if I miss him here, I can see him later?
No, if there was concern on their part, they never expressed it to me. Okay. And I think because everybody knew what this was going into it, everybody involved knew that this was a one-off event. There was no conversations or expectations about the future in terms of touring with the Condons. So whether or not we had been announced for TNA had zero impact, in my opinion, and I think in theirs, by virtue of the fact that they never mentioned it, had zero impact on Australia.
We should mention the press conference. It's a big one. It gets lots of media. You guys do it on November 18th in Sydney. There's newspapers and TV stations. Everybody is treating this as if it was a big happening. In fact, 6 or 7 newspapers, according to the Observer, report what they're about to see here as if it were a real news story. Of course, you probably know what's happening here. Flair is going to throw a table off the stage and attack Hogan. Hogan's going to get some color, brother. And wouldn't you know it, he just happens to be wearing a white shirt, and now that blood is all over the white shirt. Flair's going to then start punching him, whipping Hogan with his belt. And then they do a special sale on the heels of this, where the unsold seats are lowered to 50. They were charging hundreds for some of these seats before. And they're just doing this for a week, and then the ticket prices are back up on the heels of this coverage and this media event. What do you remember of this angle where we're going to, because this even makes TMZ, by the way, where they get a quote from Hogan's people saying that this was real, the blood was real, the injuries were real. Of course, the blood is real, but listen, I like this idea. Let's get them talking. Let's do a story. Let's do an angle. And I'm sure Flair and Hulk were all up for this. No,
couldn't talk him out of it. And I do remember, and what I remember most vividly is just the copious amounts of blood. This wasn't just a little color. It was barbaric. Yeah. It was too much. And that was my impression. It was just too much. Like, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, what is somebody going to bring a gun to the ring? I mean, where do you go from there? That's what I remember thinking.
Sort of like when Jeff Jarrett murdered Morgan's grandpa in the parking lot in Nashville last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That made no sense to me, but yeah.
It's reported in the Observer that your deal with TNA is supposed to be U.S. exclusive. So you guys are going to be exclusive, but only in the U.S. You could still do international. Were you thinking when you put together the TNA deal that, hey, we'll keep doing all this TNA stuff here in America, but if this Australia thing is successful, we might want to do more of this. So let's give ourselves a carve out for that.
No, that wasn't our thinking at all. And I'm not so sure. I think I may have one of my old TNA contracts laying around somewhere or on a computer that I no longer use, but I think I have one. I may have to go back and look at that because I don't think that that's true either. I don't recall negotiating exclusivity and only being available in the U.S. and carving out Europe. I don't think that that's true.
It's written at the time that the promoters were expecting Sydney and Melbourne to do well, around 12,000, but Brisbane and Perth were not doing as well. Do you remember internally there being an expectation of 12,000 fans?
I don't think we camped out on a number, but I do recall talking to Michael Condon, and he was very convinced that they would sell out Sydney for sure.
Dave would say that, you know, Hogan has proven with this event at the press conference that he's still a big star and can gather a lot of attention. Unfortunately, he doesn't think that it's going to translate and sell a lot of tickets, at least enough to where this could be a financial success. The first night is Melbourne, November 21st. And Meltzer would say the two may not have been able to wrestle a classic match, but they could still work a crowd with the best of them. The first match in 7 years between the two most enduring pro wrestling stars of the modern era, with one being 56 and a physical wreck, and the other being nearly 61, played out as a big success as far as crowd reactions went on the opening night of the tour on November 21st in Melbourne. So listen, on the surface, this sounds like, man, these are some old guys doing a match here. But the reality is, we don't talk about this a lot. Jericho's 52 years old and still doing his thing on a weekly basis with AEW. And Sting at this point, as I understand it, is north of 60. I mean, 64 years old. So Sting is older than either one of these cats. And Jericho's just a handful of years behind Hogan here. This felt like old timers tour. That's not the way it's presented today. Has our opinion on age and wrestling or just society changed over the course of the last decade or so, Eric? Or what do you chalk that up to? Because you do see guys I mean, Jeff Jarrett, for instance, looks better than ever. He's almost Hulk's age. He's 55. He'll be 56 this year, which is what Hogan was here. And I know these are different athletes with different styles and different lifestyles, but it just feels like the attitude is a little different. I mean, as you and I are recording this tonight, Jeff Jarrett is in singles action against Dax from FTR. But this is almost like a farewell senior tour, whatever you want to do for Hogan. How do you reconcile the age difference and just how that's different today versus back then?
I think a lot of this started the ageism. I said it. I said ageism. I hate it. I fucking hate that word too. I hate the ism words because they get used way too much. But I think the age thing became an issue back in the 90s once WCW started pounding on WWE. Vince McMahon and WWE made a big deal out of Hogan's age, made a big deal out of Randy Savage's age, talked often about how they were younger, and did it in a very derisive way when referring to Hulk and Randy and making fun of them. You remember the skits,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, all of that was designed to paint WCW at the time, which was, you know, Hulk and Randy and Roddy Piper and some of the other people we had as older over the hill talents. That was a marketing strategy, a branding strategy, if you will. And that carried over into the wrestling media. You know, that became kind of the differences between WCW and WWE. We were older. We were better. We delivered a bigger audience for a long time. We dominated the 18 to 49-year-old demo. None of that mattered to WWE's marketing and branding strategy because they just kept beating on that, to the point where I think, you know, like I said, the wrestling media, you know, began to echo it and kind of took that position, and it just kind of filters down. I think the difference now is that people have seen guys like Chris Jericho and others that have been around the business for a long time, still going out there and performing. I think people are starting to see that it was just marketing and branding and not real. Sting is, you know, now Sting's not out there doing it every single week.
No.
But he is still a powerful, viable, successful character. And it's not about the age. It's about the magic, man. It's about the charisma. It's going out there and delivering. And in some cases, perhaps with Sting, it's a little bit of nostalgia because people still remember that Crow character and that Sting character and like to experience it again. I think Chris Jericho is probably better today in some, not physically. He's probably lost a step or two, and he would probably admit that. But I think as a performer, as a well-rounded performer, he's better today than he was 15 years ago, 20 years. He's got more experience. He's learned more. He's grown and evolved his character as need be. I think he's a better performer than he was 15 or 20 years ago. And I think the audience is starting to recognize that too.
Well, what's recognized by Dave Meltzer here is, well, let's just read it. The bad news, like with Hogan's last wrestling match more than 2 years ago in Memphis, it showed that even the biggest of draws can no longer sell out major arenas or even come close for his rare appearances, even with great local publicity, without the name WWE on the bill with him. The old days of wrestling are gone, and to draw a crowd, it is the promotion and the package show that draws, not really the individuals. Do you believe that these days it's hard to draw with just a name of the individual? It's the whole show and the whole package as opposed to a single name being a draw?
I do. I think that's true. And I don't think it's new. I don't think that's a new phenomenon. But I do believe I agree with that statement. You know, I do.
We should note that Meltzer would say in 2002, WWE ran a show at Colonial Stadium. Hogan was supposed to be the big draw, but as we mentioned, he pulls out before the actual show. but it does more than $3 million at the gate. It draws a sellout here in Australia, 56,732 people. It's still a big show, the biggest since the demise of WCW in Australia. But there's only 8,000 people here. And that's a disappointment for the promoters, according to the Observer, who paid huge money for Hogan and Ric Flair, who spent for production value similar to an old Nitro. After night one, do you remember speaking with the Condons, or, I mean, were they upset? Were they disappointed?
No. Well, were they upset and disappointed? Probably. I would be if I were them. But they didn't sell it. You know, we were just focusing on the next show. It wasn't till towards the end of the tour that I started having serious conversations with them. So after the first night, no, there was nobody reacted too much. I think everybody was still hopeful that, you know, the walk up for the rest of the tour would be significant because of the amount of press that we got. We did get a ton of press, in addition to what we booked ourselves, or the Condons booked, I should say. Just general media coverage. We got a ton of it. And I think everybody was kind of hopeful that tomorrow night's going to be better, or the next night is going to be better. But it wasn't until towards the end that the reality sunk in, and those were some serious, unfortunate conversations.
You talked to us about Hulk being really concerned about stepping in the ring, and could he do this physically? After night one, do you have a conversation with him?
No, you know, not about that. Not about how he was. Obviously, I'd ask him how he was feeling, and you know, I think emotionally he had so much fun in there with Rick, that he just put it out of his mind. You know, he knew going in he was going to hurt. He knew going in he was going to be extremely limited. He was fearful that the back might give out, but as long as it didn't, let's just get to the next town, brother.
The old Murphy's Law says if something can go wrong, it will. As I understand it, there's also a rainstorm that's going to hurt your walk up. The second show in Perth, Western Australia on the 24th, so 3 days later, does 2,500 fans. This is even with them doing 2-for-1 tickets the final week of the show. It's got to be a disaster. You know, they were hoping for sellouts. They were hoping for 17,000 or so per show. 2,500 are here. After night two, this is less awesome. How awkward or uncomfortable are you when you see, man, this thing's losing money and fast? You're there in the middle of it. What's the vibe amongst the talent? Does it change when they go out and they see, I don't know, I've never been there, but in my head, when you have in your head an expectation set and there's going to be all these folks and a huge crowd and we're going to feed off their energy, and then you go out there and it's mostly empty and there's very few people there, it has to affect your performance, right?
Yes and no. I think a lot of the talent that was on that card were grateful to be there. A lot of the talent, with the exception of Hulk and Rick, a lot of the talent that were on that card this was a big crowd for them. A lot of them weren't used to performing in front of thousands of people. Some of those talent on that card at that point in their careers were used to wrestling in front of hundreds. So even though, yes, the promoters were, I'm sure, depressed. Again, at this point on the second night, I don't think I'd had a conversation with them yet. Again, keep in mind that our portion of this was guaranteed. So we were aware that tickets hadn't moved the way everybody had hoped they were. And we were concerned about that because it was a reflection on Hulk and Rick, mostly Hulk. So we were aware and concerned, but not necessarily depressed about it. That didn't happen until later, towards the end of the tour. But I think as talent, from a talent's perspective, you walk through that curtain, you get that reaction, you're still experiencing a lot of the same emotion that you do, even if you're sold out. It's not as intense. It's not the same, Not suggesting that it is. But when you walk through that curtain and you get a reaction from 2,500 people, now these are 2,500 very, very loud, active, insane wrestling fans. And you don't really notice as much as you would think the empty seats. And again, Perth, Sydney was a big venue. I don't remember the name of the venue in Perth, but it wasn't like, 2,500 people was probably half full, maybe. It wasn't as big of a venue. So it's still, the energy was still there. And like I said, a lot of that talent that was on that card at that point, some of them like Kenny Anderson had worked in WWE and obviously worked in front of much, much bigger crowds. But at this point in his career, he was working in front of 300 or 400 people in Wisconsin some nights. So this was still kind of a big deal for him. And people like him. I don't just pick it out Ken, but people in that category.
The arena in Perth, if it's set up for basketball, does 8,500. If you're seating everybody, it's 13,600. Total capacity for any, I mean, the most you could fit in there without a wrestling ring is 21,000.
Ooh.
So,
They might have cut it off then. They might have cut off part of the arena. I don't know.
Yeah, they were definitely doing that. And the Melbourne show, which is show number 3, is going to be taped for TV in Australia. It's supposed to air in prime time on 1 HD. And Meltzer would write, I've been told it's the first showing of free-to-air television in prime time since the 1998 Survivor Series. So it's a big deal. Of course, it doesn't air, and we know why now. You mentioned that. It was written at the time it's going to be released as a DVD, presumably in both Australia as well as the North American market. All 4 shows are being taped, but it's not clear if the shows will be released as a separate DVD or if all 4 will be a part of one DVD. During the show, at several points, they asked the audience to chant Hogan, which no doubt will be taped for the DVD and inserted where needed.
Was Dave there?
No.
Well, no, he said at one point they were asking the crowd to chant Hogan. How would he know that if he wasn't there?
He got reports from fans who were there.
Oh, he's full of shit. Whatever.
What do you think that footage would be worth today, if you had to guess?
I don't know, man. I've often thought about that. I don't know. It'll probably be worth more 10 years from now than it is today, but I don't know. I wish I had a copy of it. That's for sure. It was an experience, and the fact that it was Imaga's last match, right before he passed, I think makes me wish I had a copy of it. I liked working with him. I got along with him really well. He was a good dude. I don't know what it's worth. I have no idea.
Meltzer would talk about the first match here, saying, in the ring, the match was, by virtually all accounts, a success, given limited expectations. Hogan was moving slowly, took no bumps, and had admitted that with his physical issues, he can no longer even do his leg drop. He favored his left knee a lot after throwing his brace into the crowd after it came off. In a sense, Flair was his perfect opponent, as he still bumped all over the place, and both men bled heavily. Flair a sick amount and took plenty of shortcuts, including the involvement of Jimmy Hart, as well as having Lacey Von Erich at ringside play into the finish. Flair was basically Hogan's bumping dummy, and several remarked that they can't see Hogan being able to work like this in the U.S. But fans will overlook a lot if they think people are big stars, whether it's the U.S. or anywhere. Hogan and Flair, for that matter, were both concerned for being able to get Hogan through 4 matches in the condition he's in. I have little doubt that Hogan can work the crowd, but can his body hold up, and can he still draw the kind of business that will justify paying him and Flair what they want at this stage of the game? Did you watch these matches at all? What did you think of how they pulled it off?
Yeah, I was there, ringside. For the conditions that we had to work within, knowing where Hulk was at physically, I was ecstatic to just get through the match and see him be able to get to the locker room.
Right.
So my expectations were already pretty low because I knew what we were up against. So my take on the match was probably different than the average fan's take on the match. Again, I was ecstatic just to get through it and be able to get to the next night. So I didn't react to the matches the way, a fan probably would.
The only merch at the show is Hulk Hogan merch, and there's a slogan or a catchphrase on the new t-shirts What you gonna do when the FU runs wild on you? What do you think of that?
Well, that was a reference to the Fu Manchu.
Yeah.
But yeah. We didn't come up with that. That was local. That was the Condons. We approved it. Obviously, Hulk approved it, I should say. Didn't really have much of an opinion, but it's kind of cool when you think about it. Might sell here. Should put it on Box of Gimmicks. No, wait a minute. Hulk will sue us. Nah, never mind.
I don't know about that. Yeah. It's also written here that the only match that gets better ratings as far as from the fans as they're reviewing the matches was Matt Cross and Shannon Moore. Matt Cross here at Spartan 3000. But they said everything else was just kind of eh. And Meltzer wonders maybe they should have just loaded up the undercard with a lot of younger talent and not done so much, legend talent and just left the legends for Hogan and Flair. If you had it to do over again, and I'm not saying you made these matches, this was on somebody else, but do you think that would have been more attractive? But all the other stars of today, like the future stars, like guys who are really in the prime of their career, and then when all that's done, then we'll trot out Hogan and Flair for the main event. Like that's what everybody's here to see. Let's just give them the best matches we can underneath. Or do you like the idea of let's load it up with legends?
I don't think it's so much about legends or not legends. I think it's people that have been on television.
Right.
That's what the audience, these were stars that they, in Australia, these are stars that they watched on television from WWE or WCW as the case may be. That's why they were there. And I don't think that having younger talent that could physically do more, but the audience didn't know, I don't think that would have had any measurable difference. I don't think it would have made any difference. Now, would the show technically have been from a perspective like Meltzer's, it's all about the technical performance? Yeah, maybe Dave Meltzer would have liked it better, but I don't think the average fan who's buying a ticket would have. They were there to see people they'd seen on television. That's why they were there.
It's sort of insinuated that perhaps Hogan's hip came out of place in the first match. Do you remember hearing that?
No. I mean, he had a lot of other issues, but I don't think that was one of them.
A friend of the show, a referee, Anthony, writes in, it was hard watching Hulk. He was barely able to move around backstage or before shows. He was clearly in a lot of pain, but as soon as he walked through the curtain, it was like nothing bothered him. It was unreal. He couldn't do the leg drop, but the crowd knew and didn't care. Man, Hulk's a performer. He can turn it on, can he?
It was, who wrote that?
A referee named Anthony.
He's right. He was right. Seeing Hulk backstage, it brought a tear to my eye. And I felt so bad for him. But again, that's what I was kind of trying to explain earlier. Guys like Ric Flair, guys like Hulk Hogan, that's part of who they are. And walking through that curtain, you're getting a part of your life back. I know it doesn't sound like it should make any sense to people like you or I, but because we're not Rick and we're not Hulk, but I've been around it enough in close enough proximity that I see it. And you see people who it's almost like they're getting a part of their life back or a part of their youth back. They're getting out there and experiencing something that they've experienced for the majority of their lives. Deep down inside, they're afraid they're not going to have anymore. They're just not going to be able to do it anymore. So to be able to go out through that curtain and get that feedback from that audience, whether it's a sellout or a half sellout or a third sellout, whatever, you're still getting that validation in a way. And it does change them emotionally. I've seen it a bunch of times especially with a guy like Hulk. And I remember being backstage because his ex-wife Jennifer was with us on that trip, and to see him in the amount of pain that he was in, to see him, anybody, forget about the fact that I am close to Hulk, but to see another human being sitting in a chair and knowing how much pain they're in, and in my own mind wondering, are they going to be able to get through the curtain? What's going to happen when he gets into the ring? You're worried about that. But then you see them go through that curtain and it's like a different person comes through the curtain. it's like they walk taller, their eyes are brighter. It's just, it's a different energy. And it's created by the people on the other side of the curtain. It's created by the people in the audience. And it was an interesting thing to watch.
Night 2, match 2. It's a no DQ match with Hogan and Flair. Meltzer would say he heard it wasn't nearly as good as the first night, but we're going to do a lot of run-ins here. Lacey Von Erich's going to come out with Flair. That was not the plan on the first one. There's going to be some blood, as you might imagine. Orlando Jordan, Heidenreich, the Nasty Boys, lots of run-ins here. Jimmy Hart's involved, but of course it ends with Hogan doing the obligatory posing routine. Were you privy to the fact that they were gonna? I mean, clearly it's a more modern age. They can't do the same match over and over, but it feels like they're cutting some time out too here and bringing in some supporting roles. Is this just to add garnish around Hulk's limitations? Maybe.
Yeah, definitely. It was to camouflage the obvious as best we could. Again, I didn't lay those matches out. There was probably Rick and Hulk, deciding what they needed to do to get through it. But clearly it was to camouflage the obvious.
Well, I'm sure you guys weren't losing any sleep over it, and we're not losing any sleep at all these days. Thanks to Sleep Me, these folks make customizable, climate-controlled sleep solutions that help you improve your entire well-being, and that's been the case for me. Are you someone who needs extra recovery from that last workout, or maybe you're just someone who sleeps hot in general? You don't need to suffer, wake up tired, or wake up sore with Sleep Me's award-winning sleep systems. It's a mattress topper that fits over your current mattress. You don't need to buy a new mattress. But what Sleep Me does is use water's amazing thermal powers to cool your bed as low as 55 degrees. That means no matter how hot you get, you can sleep at your ideal sleep temperature. And this works on all types of beds, even the adjustable ones. And you don't just have to have your whole bed one temperature. Let me explain. My wife wants to climb into a warm bed, but she doesn't want to get all hot and sweaty, so she'll have it cooler off. But then she wants to be warmed up to wake her up. She sets it and forgets it with the Sleep Me app. That's right. You can schedule what time you want your bed to be cold, what time you want it to warm. It's amazing. And that doesn't affect what's going on my side of the bed. I like to sleep a lot cooler than she does. This is just a game changer for me in my life. Last night I slept 9 hours, Eric. Like when you and I were first hanging out, I was sleeping 5 and 6 hours. I'm sleeping better than ever. I know
Wow.
I'm productive. I don't need a nap in the afternoon. There's no crash. I'm just way more productive this way. I have a better quality of life. And I think you should check it out, man. Currently, Sleep Me has 2 water-based sleep systems, the Doc Pro and the Cube. Both sleep systems will get your mattress down to just 55 degrees, dude. The Doc Pro, though, is the new latest and greatest, the most powerful system for the perfect sleep climate, no matter what your body's heat load is or the room temperature. If you need better athletic recovery or you're suffering from hot, uncomfortable sleep, you got to check out Sleep Me at sleep.me/83 weeks. That's sleep.me/83 weeks. Plus, as a listener of this podcast, you can save up to 20% on a sleep system if you use promo code 83 weeks. This really is a game changer. You need to check it out at sleep.me/83 weeks. Save up to 20% using promo code 83 weeks. Eric, I love my Sleep Me. I know you guys do yours as well.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize, before I got Sleep Me, how much better I sleep when it's cooler. I've never noticed it as much, but I noticed when I started really turning it down, because I like it cold too, I'd get up in the morning and it's like the blankets are all in the same place. The pillows are all in the same place. Because previously I'd toss and turn and get up and down and trying to get comfortable so much. But and Lori's the one, Ms. B's the one, she likes it really cold and she cranks it all the way down. And all of a sudden I realized I get up in the morning and it's like, I didn't tear shit up last night. This is awesome. And it's because I'm just in a deeper sleep. Don't toss and turn nearly as much.
Check it out. You're going to love it. I know we love ours, man. It's a game changer. Sleep.me/83 weeks. So let's talk about the third show. You're only going to have 2,300 fans here in Brisbane. Meltzer would write, even though we're doing 2-for-1 tickets, it's just not a bonanza, and fans aren't nearly as nice as they have been in other cities. There's lots of heckling here. The main event only goes 10 minutes. Meltzer would say Hogan bleeds right away and doesn't take any bumps. Flair bleeds a little later. Eventually, Fatu, Jordan, and Jimmy Hart are all involved. And Hogan's going to use the Jimmy Hart megaphone on Ric Flair to get the pin. And Meltzer would say, quote, said to be sad watching both because they looked old, were limited, and were working in an empty arena. At this point, it feels like the wheels are coming off. Night 3, is this when it starts to get the air gets a little thick, Eric?
Yeah, that's it was the night that afterwards, Michael Condon came to me and pretty much laid out the situation. Let us know. He didn't go into a lot of detail because we weren't privy to the contracts or the agreements that he had with his investors, but let us know that a group of his investors were very, very disappointed and that we might have an issue. Michael Condon was going to try to work with his investors to try to make sure that we got paid, because there was a question in my mind going into the fourth night. Do we play? Do we perform? If we're not going to get paid, we need to retain some leverage, because once we performed that last show,
We have no leverage.
we have zero leverage. And there was some conversation I had with Hulk about that. Do we perform? Do we not perform? Do we need some kind of guarantee that we're going to get paid per the contract? And we decided to go ahead and perform no matter what, because if we didn't, it would all be a bad reflection on Hulk and Rick.
Yes.
Nobody's going to blame. Publicly, they're not going to put it on the promoter because
They don't know
publicly
it.
people wouldn't understand. They don't know.
They don't know who
It
that
would
is.
it would all come down on Hulk and Rick, and we wanted to avoid that.
The final night of the tour is actually the most successful one. You have 11,000 folks here in Sydney. They're doing 2-for-1s here at the end, but still, that's what it is. It's a no DQ match. As we said, this is Umaga's last match as well. He's going to pass away less than a week later. Anthony, our old pal, had this to say. This tour had Umaga's last match, which was the best match of the tour with Mr. Kennedy. It was a pay-per-view quality match. I remember at the false finish, Iki saying, "We got him." Umaga was awesome on the tour. He took care of the boys when we went out. You could see he was a leader and how everyone respected him. How did you hear about Umaga's passing, Eric?
Oh, somebody called me. I was in there. Lori and I were living in Arizona at the time. And I remember somebody calling me. It was in the morning. I don't remember who called me, but somebody did and let me know. And I was shocked. It's still hard to imagine in a way. But yeah, I was shocked.
We're trying to put a bow on this. You wrote in your book, Grateful, that the promoter's biggest mistake was their expectations, but they did take care of the talent. They got good hotel rooms and all that. And I guess most of the fans had fun. Did any good come out of this tour, do you think?
Oh, I mean, nothing aside from the fact that we didn't get paid what we were supposed to get paid, and yours truly didn't get paid at all. Nothing bad happened, but nothing really great happened either. Nothing really good happened either. I mean, I'm sure, a lot of the talent, the undercard, they had a great time. They had fun. Australia is a fun place to go, by the way. The people were great. The weather in November was great in Australia. There was nothing bad about it other than the fact that we didn't get paid and we didn't get the turnout that we were hoping for. But I can't point to anything that really good happened either.
Do you think Hulk or Rick regretted doing it?
I don't know about Rick. I think probably Hulk did. I think had it sold out, had it reached its expectations and been a feather in his career cap, so to speak, towards the end of his career, I think he would have had a much different feeling about it. But, the fact that everything, it's not like the Condons did anything wrong. They promoted the hell out of it. It's right. Sometimes when something like this happens, you can go, the promoter, cut corners or didn't do this or should have done that. It's very easy to kind of pick it apart, right? Because there's always something that you could have done better. But in this case, they checked every box. And it really came down to Hulk and Rick just didn't draw the way everybody expected them to, including Hulk and Rick. And I think that probably would have led to regret, certainly on Hulk's party. And I can't speak for Rick. I don't know. We never talked about it. Rick got paid and he had a blast. So, but Rick has a blast pretty much
Everywhere he goes.
Yeah, it's not like that's a big deal, right?
No.
But I think for Hulk it was disappointing, and he probably did regret it. And to have to go through physically what he went through, even more so. I regretted it. I regretted putting the deal together. I'll never. One of the things I regret the most is being on a plane with Brutus the Barber Beefcake. I got up this is funny. It's not a funny story. It's a sick story, but we were all sitting in first class, and on this particular plane, I don't remember what model it was, but there was first class and there was a galley where, you could, in a bar, actually there was a bar where you could get up and go pour yourself a drink mid-flight. And of course that got a lot of use, but I was sitting in the second first class section, the one behind on the other side of the bar. And I remember it was like, I don't know what time it was. We're on our way home and it's nighttime. It's dark. I get up to go use the restroom. And as I get up to go use the restroom, I had to walk through the bar section, the galley, to get to the restroom. And there's Brutus the Barber Beefcake taking a leak all over the bar. And it was such a bizarre thing to see that it took a second for me to register. What the hell is he doing? And it disgusted me so much, and he disgusted me so much. And I was so embarrassed that I was even on the plane with this cat. As a flight attendant saw it, and it turned into a big deal.
Well, he was just drunk and didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, amongst other things, I'm sure. But it's just that was like the last thing. Those are the last straw for me. I mean, emotionally, having realized that we probably weren't going to get paid, or if we were, it was going to cost a lot of money in a lawsuit to get our money out of Australia and all that. And then the last thing, just, wake up and look at Brutus the Barber Beefcake taking a leak all over the inside of a plane with a stupid grin on his face, laughing like the village idiot that he is, really just capped it off for me.
Let's do a few questions here. Carl Hayes has a great one. I feel like I know the answer now, though. If you could have left one talent there, who would it have been?
It would. Yeah, it would have been Brutus.
Francisco says, "What did you enjoy most about doing this tour?"
I think, I know this will sound, boring to most people, but just walking around Sydney, and it's a beautiful city, and there's a lot of history, and I love history, and just walking around, meeting the people, I enjoyed that a lot. I think I had one day to myself, one afternoon to myself, and I just got up early and just walked around. Mrs. B was with me, so Lori got a chance to go over to Australia. She had to leave before I did. She wasn't there for the whole tour, but she got to spend, a part of it there with me, and we got to explore Australia together. So that was fun. I enjoyed
that. Matthew wants to know, if Umaga didn't pass away, was Umaga ever discussed to be a part of TNA?
Not that I was involved in.
Okay. Brad wants to know, what was the food like in Australia? Are there any other differences that jumped off the page?
We ate well. I got to tell you, sushi was great in Australia, but we ate really, really well, and the food was fantastic. Nothing out of the ordinary. It's not like we went to any, ethnic restaurants or anything like that, but we ate really well, and the food was delicious. I did eat a lot of sushi, so I can attest to the sushi. The quality of the sushi in Australia is excellent.
Lenny Bakken has a great question. Eric has mentioned that once you start making money, you get used to it and you don't focus on it or enjoy it as much as you do at first. If he had to pinpoint a year, which year would he say was the first year he felt financially comfortable?
Oh,
Lenny Bakken, by the way, great investment guy. If you're looking for somebody to handle your money, Edward Jones and Lenny Bakken is your guy. Shout out to him, big listener of the show. Anyway, first year you felt financially comfortable, Eric?
I don't know that I've ever felt financially comfortable. Isn't that weird? I mean, I have been, obviously, and sometimes more than others. But I've never woken up and gone, you know what? I've got enough money. That's just not me. I don't know that I'd ever be that way. To me, it's not about the money as much as it's about the mission. You know, I love trying to figure out a way to make a lot of money.
Yes,
I love the process, but having a lot or not doesn't necessarily give me comfort, if that makes sense. I can't really explain it.
Well, I know you're going to be able to explain next week. Slamboree 2000. We're getting out of Spring Stampede 2000. It's the Bischoff Russo reset. We got Hulk Hogan feuding with Billy Kidman. Bret Hart's going to become involved. The Triple Cage. David Arquette winning the title. Sting and Vampiro. Shane Douglas and Ric Flair. Woo! Next week's going to be a barn burner for us. Get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com, starting at just $9. And right now you can enjoy the first week on us completely free. It's a free trial at adfreeshows.com. We've also got a ton of great conversation over there that I really recommend you go out of your way to check out. We just released a conversation with David Zahadi, who made so many of those fantastic videos over the years that we all just love so much. And even with the benefit of hindsight, they stand up to this day. They're just fantastic. And so do the theme songs with Jim Johnston. We have conversations with both of those guys and the guy who fired Bruce Pritchard to run WWE TV and eventually hired David Zahadi, John Filippelli. All of those exclusive conversations are posted right now at adfreeshows.com. You don't want to miss it. We're having weekly live experiences as well. You can get on there with Kevin Nash or Eric Bischoff or Mick Foley or whoever. You never know what's going to happen at adfreeshows.com. I think it's the best value around. Love to have your interaction. Maybe you got a question about next week's show. Ask us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at 83 Weeks. Also want you to check out our brand new YouTube channel, 83 Weeks on youtube.com. Lots of fun new merch over at 83weeksmerch.com. The brand new Endeavor to Persevere tee, personal favorite of Eric Bischoff. The LWO inspired For Life tee. See it all right now at 83weeksmerch.com. And of course, if your business targets men 25 to 54 years old, no better place to advertise than right here on 83 Weeks. You hear some of the same sponsors year after year after year. Why is that? Well, because it really works. And with our super targeted audience, there's very little waste. Go right now to advertisewitheric.com to find out more about advertising with 83 Weeks. Eric, I don't know what I expected today, but boy, today's episode was fun. Any last words about this Hulkamania tour?
No, live and learn. I guess that's the only thing I can say. When I think about this tour, it's like, okay, check that box, did that. Now I know what an escrow means in Australia. Live and learn.
Live and learn indeed. And that's what we try to do every week here. And we'll be back next week trying to live and learn a little more, talking about WCW in 2000 right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Fite Plus is the ultimate digital platform for live sports and entertainment, and they're now offering a free 7-day trial at tryfite.com. Fite Plus is packed with a premium live event schedule, over 1,000 hours of live action every year, and a library of more than 4,000 hours on demand, plus exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. Fite is a great partner of ours. They support us, so let's support them. Give that free 7-day trial a shot, and you'll be a member for life. That's tryfite.com. tryfite.com.
Hey guys, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley here, and I need to call a quick timeout, a brief timeout, because I wanted to tell your listeners what I have been telling Foley is Pod listeners for a while now about all the cool things happening over on adfreeshows.com.
An all-new edition of The Insiders is here, as Conrad welcomes David Zahadi, the man behind so many iconic video packages WWF fans grew up on, including one that left Vince in tears.
You got it. And Conrad, I swear, I walked outside the studio, and Vince was sitting down on the concrete floor, crying hysterically, just saying thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. I went up to Hulk Hogan. He says, good job. Can't wait to see it. 15 minutes later in the stairwell, Vince is still sitting down in a different spot now, crying, saying thank you. Thank you.
Special guest host Raven sat in for Jake the Snake Roberts on the Snake Pit, looking back 25 years on his rivalry with DDP and an interesting new member of the flock.
Jimmy Hart comes up to me one day and goes, hey, Hulk would like a favor. I go, what is it? He goes, he'd like you to put Horace in the flock. I'm like, sure. I'm not going to say no. But it became a running gag like Jericho and Conan. Three of us used to hang out together and call ourselves the triumvirate of useless information. And so they were like, wait, did you put Horace Hogan in the flock because he's Hogan's nephew? I'm like, what? He's Hogan's nephew? I had no idea.
That's just a small taste, a sampling, if you will, of what we have waiting for you, with 4 levels to choose from. 4. See for yourself why ad-free shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now, right now, at adfreeshows.com. Yeah.